Go live. All right, folks, welcome back to Pangburn. We are live again for another live stream. Today we are covering a very current event, the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire. And we've been having a lot of conversations about what's been going on over in Israel since October 7th, the October 7th terrorist attack. And I wanted to start today's stream by reading a bit of an update on Israel-Hezbollah, because many people don't know what's been going on for about a year here. So we're going to start from October 2023, and we're just going to go through some events here. And then we're going to go into the ceasefire details, and then we're going to open this up to a discussion. So, the hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah that began in October 2023 have been marked by significant military engagements, political developments, and humanitarian impacts. Below is a detailed timeline and key events. October 2023, initiation of hostilities. October 7th, 2023, Hamas launched a surprise attack on Israel, leading to widespread violence. In solidarity, Hezbollah fired guided rockets and artillery shells at Israeli positions in the disputed Sheba Farms area. If I get any of the pronunciations wrong, I apologize. Israel responded with drone strikes and artillery fire on Hezbollah positions near the Lebanon Golan Heights border. Just had to check my... Okay, yeah, I'm good. October 8th to 9th, 2023, Israel conducted airstrikes on southern Lebanon near the towns of Marwain, Aita, Ash, Shab, and Deira in the Bint Jbeil district, following the infiltration of Palestinian militants into Israeli territory. The Israel Defense Force, IDF, reported killing at least 2 infiltrators. November 2023, escalation in civilian impact. November 13th, 2023, a group of journalists from Reuters, AFP, and Al Jazeera were targeted by tank rounds fired from the direction of Israel while covering events in Alma Ek Shab. Reuters photojournalist Issam Abdallah was killed and several others were injured. January 2024, targeted assassinations. January 2nd, 2024, Israel conducted an airstrike in the Deya neighborhood of Beirut, resulting in the assassination of Salah al-Aruri, the deputy chairman of Hamas's political bureau, and 6 other members. Al-Aruri was responsible for expanding Hamas's activities in the West Bank. January 8th, 2024. Israel assassinated Wissam al-Tawil, the deputy commander of Hezbollah's Redwan force, who is accused of orchestrating attacks on Israeli targets. July 2024, civilian casualties and escalation. July 27, 2024, the Majdal Shams attack occurred, resulting in the deaths of 12 children in the Golan Heights area. Israel and the U.S. attributed the attack to Hezbollah, marking a significant escalation in hostilities. Hezbollah denied responsibility. July 30th, 2024, Israel assassinated Fuad Shukra, a senior Hezbollah military commander, further intensifying the conflict. September 2024, assassination of Hezbollah leader. September 27, 2024, Israel conducted a targeted operation resulting in the assassination of Hassan Nasrallah, the Secretary General of Hezbollah. This action significantly impacted Hezbollah's leadership structure. October 2024, ground invasion. October 1st, 2024, Israel commenced a ground invasion into southern Lebanon, leading a widespread leading to widespread evacuations and significant military engagements. The invasion aimed to dismantle Hezbollah's infrastructure near the Israeli border. November 2024, ceasefire agreement. November 26, 2024, which is today, after nearly 14 months of conflict, Israel and Hezbollah agreed to a U.S. brokered ceasefire. The agreement includes a 2-month initial halt in fighting, with provisions for Hezbollah to withdraw from southern Lebanon and Israeli troops to return to their side of the border. Humanitarian impact. The conflict has resulted in significant casualties and displacement. Over 3,500 people, mostly civilians, have died in Lebanon, while Israel has reported over 70 deaths, including civilians and soldiers. The hostilities have led to the destruction of entire villages in Lebanon and extensive damage to infrastructure in both countries. Now, I want to get into the ceasefire a little bit more, a little extra. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in. Please drop a like when you jump into the room. We're going to be talking this topic all night. Likes are appreciated. And be sure to drop a comment of how you're feeling about this conflict and this recent ceasefire. So a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah has taken effect, aiming, and this I think technically starts in the morning, but I think it's already the morning, right? Aiming to halt over a half-year hostilities that began in October 2023. So the agreement brokered by the United States and France stipulates 60-day cessation of hostilities. Key provisions include withdrawal of forces, like we were just talking about. Hezbollah is to retreat north of the Litani River, approximately 25 kilometers from the Israeli border, while Israeli forces will withdraw from southern Lebanon. Deployment of Lebanese army and UN peacekeepers. The Lebanese army, supported by United Nations peacekeepers, will be deployed in southern Lebanon to ensure compliance and prevent Hezbollah's return to the bordered area. International monitoring. An international committee led by the U.S. will oversee adherence to the ceasefire terms. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasized that Israel retains the right to respond if Hezbollah violates the agreement. Lebanese officials have expressed cautious optimism, highlighting the importance of national sovereignty and the need for vigilant monitoring. While the ceasefire addresses the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah, the situation in Gaza remains unresolved, with ongoing hostilities between Israel and Hamas. So, this is where we are at thus far, folks. We got some comments already. Coffee Water says, no such thing as Israel. It's called the Apartheid state. Well, I think that's just demonstrably wrong. There is such thing as Israel. Get a map. Has no balls waved the white flag. They said, please do your thing in Gaza. Just leave us alone. Lord, have mercy on our souls. Coffee Water says, free Palestine. Okay. So what does everyone think? Feel free to weigh in. Anyone who has some thoughts. I think most people are clear on what my thoughts are, about, I think Israel has the right to go hunting for those responsible for October 7th and continue to hunt for them. And that includes if there are places harboring terrorists or harboring people who continue to launch rockets towards Israel. They have the right to defend themselves and take offensive action against these attacks. So I'm, if you wanna understand where my mind's at with things like this, with global policing and war in general, the people who are trying to terrorize humanity and do terrorism and target innocence, right? Those are the people I want to see held accountable for their crimes by the rest of the world. That's my general sentiment behind how I feel about this. and I think although during war there are inevitably going to be war crimes that happen. Every war in history, it's like if one of your snipers, decides to shoot a bus full of children and they lose their mind, that's a war crime. So yeah, you're going to have people during war that break the rules and commit war crimes. And what I look for in situations like this is the commanding officers, the people responsible for keeping their warriors, their fighters in check, that they are held accountable for their crimes, and that those war crimes should be policed. Nate, I see you are unmuted. What do you got?
So just this is sort of like, I think, a geopolitical sort of viewpoint. Not that it's like academic or meant to be definitive or anything like that. I think a lot of people that see the ceasefire agreement and really want to include within that ceasefire agreement sort of the humanitarian goals for the 60 days, as well as the impact that this has had on ordinary Lebanese people, as well as ordinary Israeli citizens, the impact it's had on people who knows, maybe joined the military. They decided to join a militia and they didn't know they were going to have to fight. And then they had to fight. Is that someone that exists? Is that a real person? Yeah, it is. One thing I'll just mention, I think the external world, especially in the West, we might look at like a place like Lebanon and say, hey, well, we can sort of understand 75% of Lebanon, and so, maybe if there's a 60-day ceasefire, I have 75% faith in that, that's like a sort of an optimistic starting point in my point of view. And so, the things that I think people have clarity on is Hezbollah's proven in Lebanon that it can appear and act, and whatever politics you want to put into it, people are free to do that, but they can appear and act as a government. They can appear and act as someone who's capable of delivering or stewarding in social services. Everyone, who's a fan of Israel says boo at this point. And they've also shown that from a realist perspective, they're capable without that much of just carrying on the fight. And so that's a fact that's difficult to get over, especially if you don't understand it more, that they're capable of fighting and they're willing to fight. And this is something people have been talking about since, 2010, like 2015, when people realized that, Hezbollah has developed sort of this massive weapons store and all this other stuff. And so I think it's really good news that, at least the 75% that we sort of understand, we can maybe have some conversations about, and we can push the sort of ambiguity to the side for a second. I think it's hopefully exciting that that sort of the total package of a ceasefire deal gives the opportunity to solve the conflict in a way that can produce some sort of end for ordinary people for the next, however many years. That's asking a lot at this point, but overall, I like, as just someone who's followed the news and not done that much else, I think it's a good thing. And I think it's a good thing that at least there's those sort of topics on the table.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to see something good in at least in a ceasefire just in and of itself, for people. It's hard not to see just good intrinsically in that. Do you, Nate, have an idea of what can be done to solve this conflict? Like if you were given the reins here, are you informed enough to have some ideas as to how this might be solved?
Yeah, I mean, I've had my own ideas in the past, and I think like part of it is that my opinions, and they're just opinions, apply to a very narrow slice of the conflict. I think there is some sort of solution. This is something I don't know anything about. I don't actually, to be completely honest, understand how it would work, where you understand that there are these sort of stricter Islamist national elements that, if you want to understand them a certain way, like, right, see, and this is when you like starting with that, there's not a solution that's possible. I think from like a perspective of militaries and diplomacy, and sort of against like the liberals in the military, people that believe that realism is the way that we solve problems, or neorealism. I think getting back to an understanding of sort of the scope and scale of violence that is acceptable and possible if it is somehow required. And so I think a lot of people, I don't think there's anyone that would disagree that the October 7th attacks were not only egregious, but they were at a scale that they were meant to invite aggression and sort of try and understand how regional powers could be rebalanced away from Israel, how international attention could be paid to the region. And the West typically doesn't do well when that happens, right? Because the West always, Israel and the United States always historically had a response to that. And so, I think something like more targeted, like if there is a conflict like that, one of the sort of informal things that I don't think it would ever work in a formal like sovereign doctrine, but just understanding the types of weapons that can be used, how they can be used. I think that's on the military side, and politically, I think my guess is we need more mature relationships within both Lebanon as well as Palestinian society.
Which probably
Israel
which
needs a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, which probably starts with diplomatic negotiations, like trending towards, okay, if there's a conflict, we have a framework for peace and stability through dialogue. That may sound crazy to people who are familiar with the history between Israel and Hezbollah, but I think everyone should recognize that this is the reasonable way to at least begin trying to sort out conflicts. I have a few things here, like director mediated talks between both sides with their representatives. I think having mediation in that zone is a good thing, and France and the U.S. have played a big role in this ceasefire, for example. Sometimes it does take an outside mediator or power to come in and say, okay, look, we'll sit in the middle and we'll work with you with our resources and our information and try to help find some common ground here. And just like all diplomacy works on a global scale.
Yeah, and it's a good point. I don't know the exact mechanism for how the ceasefire was reached, but I know the CIA director was also in Doha for talks.
Yeah.
As my belief is that if we look at like a 60-day period and we say, well, look, there's even within the 60-day period, there has to be milestones, there has to be things that we're able to accomplish. One of those things is going to necessarily be messaging. This is part of the problem is I think what you mentioned when people say that things that happen in war sound really odd to people. Well, if the ceasefire is meant to act as a document that cuts the head off a snake, that's never actually true. And if people perceive that this is still a war that's being waged by generals, if people perceive this as some sort of higher order political struggle, what reason would we have to just not continue that? If people say that's what it is, then that's what it is. Yeah. So I do think like dialogue is going to be a big part of it that has to occur in the next 60 days, and people are going to have to wrap their head around at least this aspect that the social contract is livable in all of these areas, and there's a fundamental or material reason to believe that's the case.
Yeah. Well, I have some other ideas here that we'll go through eventually, but we got some more people in the room. Tivo, what do you think of the ceasefire agreement here?
Before I go into that, perhaps a more specific question, because if I'm given free reign, I will come in with a sword, and I will expect a lot of our own leaders to, perish. So,
Well, feel free to
if we could
express
just,
your
so if you could narrow it for me.
well, I mean, I like to start out with you just expressing your general sentiments. I'm fine you laying it all out there of, truthfully. But yeah, I mean, I've gone through some of the relevant, at
My
least
thoughts on the
history.
ceasefire specifically, I don't think I wouldn't say I'm hopeful.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't anticipate this sticking. And I don't, and it's not because, again, I don't think it's going to be because Lebanon or Hezbollah can't make it stick. I don't think Israel or the United States can make it stick, because I don't think the United States actually cares to make this conflict end.
And why do you think they don't care?
Or rather, they may make this one stick, but they wouldn't care to actually pursue this to resolving the conflict in Gaza, or the genocide in Gaza, I should say. And I won't back away from that term.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to debate.
You can use the term. You're going to get pushback from me and other people, and we're going to get to Gaza eventually. But I do want to stay focused on this ceasefire agreement. But so what is informing your belief of the United States doesn't have an interest in seeing this end, or that it doesn't care? Because it seems like they're actively involved in trying to.
I mean, just look at our history in the Middle East. I don't think we have any real interest in bringing peace to that region. I think that we benefit from there being conflict. I think that our leaders and their buddies benefit too much from there being conflict. They may want to, keep some sort of control over it, to keep it from just, getting out of control. But I don't think they actually want any peace. And I think that over the course of decades, over the course of really a century, they have demonstrated as much.
That's a really acute point, and I think there's also like a social science corollary, right? One of the other things that people will, if you believe a ceasefire is the start of a diplomatic end to the war, so something formal, something sovereign powers agree to, something that can be, internationally recognized as the end of the conflict. You also have to have this conversation about reconstruction, what funding sources are used, and who's actually in control in these regions. And so, this is one of the issues that, not to talk over you, TiVo, but when we use terms like genocide and stuff like this, it's well, if we look at Gaza and Palestine and Hamas and Hezbollah and who's actually capable and who's going to need to be part of that sort of reconstruction or that post-war process, I think if you leave it as a bucket that's all one thing, it's impossible to just solve in 60 days. I don't know why that is, but it's one of those things that is usually a slower. It happens when it happens. Maybe it's not necessarily an anchor for it, but I just, sorry, that's my way of agreeing with you.
So when you say you agree with him, or to bring TiVo back as well, can you point to specific evidence with regards to the conflicts that are going on right now that would show that the U.S. has no interest in ending the war and suffering that's going on? Because I can give you evidence as to how they do have an interest and how they are showing an interest, but maybe not in the way that you want them to be showing it.
I don't understand that statement.
What evidence justifies
that? Doesn't make any sense to me.
In the world today, right now, can you point to to demonstrate that the USA has no interest in helping solve the crisis in the Middle East right now.
I don't think that dismissing the past is helpful.
So your direct justification,
patterns of behavior are important.
Yeah. But not every conflict is the same, right?
Like and history didn't begin on October 7th.
Yeah, that's fine. But like, if you say, I just expect the past to repeat itself. There's new leadership now. Leadership is different than it has been in the United States. Do you see any differences in how the Biden administration, for example, has handled things in the Middle East in comparison to the Bush administration or in comparison to the Obama administration?
I would not say I see any significant difference. No.
Okay.
I would say that we live in a one-party state, and regardless of the figureheads at the top, the same interests continue to plod along as they always have.
Yeah, and one of the I think Tivo's right in one sense. If we just look at how the financial system works and what people want to agree to. Israel might look at a place like the West Bank and say, well, why aren't Israeli economics and West Bank economics, why aren't they at least similar? And this is really different. This used to be partially true, in Lebanon as well, where you could say, well, look, you have to draw a couple of these funny lines to understand how Lebanese economics works, how the system supports itself. And what it appears like now, as well as with sort of Yemen, like the Houthis in southern Yemen, one of the topics is that like this decentralization is bad for the U.S. And I don't think the U.S. is willing to, again, if you just lay this out on the table, like the U.S. isn't willing to just rebuild and refund, central banking systems and rebuild fiats in the region, sort of extend olive branches. I think if they believe that it's necessarily going to go to fund further aggressions and go to fund political instability in the future. And there's got to be like a corollary between the two. But
yeah, I see. That the Biden,
if I was to take the United States seriously.
So Tivo, you're not going to do this tonight. When someone else has already started, don't talk over them. So make sure you're listening. Make sure you wait your turn. I don't know if I'm hard to hear for some reason, but yeah, that's just a warning. So I see that the Biden administration has done things like. Ending the U.S. military presence in Afghanistan, avoiding new large-scale military interventions in the Middle East, renewed emphasis on negotiating with Iran, including attempts to revive the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, nuclear deal, continuing strong support for Israel, but also advocating for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, shifting focus to strategic competition with China and Russia, reducing the Middle East prominence in U.S. foreign policy. Does that sound anything like Bush in the Middle East?
I think that if Bush were president now and Biden had been president then, I don't think the sequence of events would have been significantly different.
And what justifies that belief?
I think that these things occur at the needs of whatever
I know you keep saying
our moneyed interests are.
Okay, I know you keep
the withdrawal of Afghanistan would have probably occurred regardless of which party or president was in office. The invasion of Afghanistan would have likely occurred regardless of which president or party was in power.
Yeah. What about renewed emphasis on negotiating with Iran? Like that would never be a Bush policy, right? And if you're saying that would have been a Biden policy at the same time, I would ask what your justification is for that belief.
If he comes with an actual treaty, sure, well, we can talk about that. Just saying, oh, we're starting again, like that means nothing to me. Show me the money.
Well, it seems like you
I don't want gestures. Gestures mean nothing to me. Gestures mean not a damn thing.
Yeah, but it does seem like you're kind of picking and choosing what points of history you're using to inform your belief that the U.S. hasn't changed. I don't know what everyone else in the room thinks, but
and furthermore, I would say that the back and forth that we've had between administrations is also another indication of the unreliability of the United States as a good faith actor. If we had non-Western powers involved in this negotiation, I think that would be much more indicative of something that is more internationally stable, rather than.
So it seems like no matter what the U.S. does in the Middle East, you're not going to believe it has any good intentions behind it because of the history.
Thus far, from what I've seen in my lifetime, no, I do not trust our leaders at all when it comes to the Middle East, at all. And until I see substantive progress made that sticks, I won't believe it.
But don't you see the Biden's shifting focus from the Middle East to strategic competition with China and Russia, advocating for a two-state solution, renewing
show me two states. Not I don't advocacy means nothing to me.
Well, we're going to get into Gaza, but it's not the US's fault that there's no two-state solution. And
it is.
Come on. How can you put that on the United States?
It is.
That's ridiculous.
Israel does what we tell them and doesn't do what we tell them.
So
all it takes is a phone call from Biden.
So you don't believe
that if there's a genocide in Gaza, it's because Biden's okay with it.
Okay. Well, I think you've gone full conspiracy mode on that. I don't think there's any evidence of what you just claimed there. But that's okay.
I won't debate the term.
Well, you don't have to debate anything. Let's bring some more voices in. Anyone else have any thoughts about the ceasefire? We are focusing on Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire agreement right now. There is a 60-day agreement. I believe it's just started. Do you guys think this is a good thing? I think ceasefires there's always good things that come out of ceasefires, in that there won't be any firing for 60 days here. And hopefully during that time some good can be done. The U.S. and France are involved in this ceasefire deal, and from my understanding, they are helping with these negotiations. Yeah. Anyone else have any thoughts? We got a lot of comments on YouTube. Yeah. So some things we were talking about how this conflict, we were talking a little bit about how it can be solved between Israel and Hezbollah, and we already read through some of the recent history here, but there is a long history in this region. And one of the things I mentioned when I was speaking to Nate is that, I really think that diplomacy needs to be, we need to, in this region, start realizing, like, we can't just start throwing missiles unless we've really exhausted diplomatic measures. I think that should be an idea that unites everyone if they're truly interested in peace. And you can do this by mediated talks. You can focus on the mutually agreed objectives, such as border security, disarmament, and economic cooperation, or even economic growth. Engage regional and international actors, the U.S., Iran, the UN, to mediate and ensure adherence to agreements. The problem is obviously a big problem is Hezbollah's ideological stance against recognizing Israel as a legitimate state. And I think that's sad. They should recognize Israel as a legitimate state. Do you agree, Tivo?
Israel should not. I would not expect them to recognize Israel as a legitimate state, at least not at the present. Israel either needs to be reformed or there at least needs to be two states. I don't mean advocacy for two states. I mean there needs to be two states at the very least before anyone could be expected to actually believe that that's going to, I'll believe it when I see it.
So, but do you believe that Israel is a legitimate state right now? And if you don't believe that, why?
I mean, Israel exists. That's almost like that's almost like a strange question to ask.
No, but
Israel
you missed
exists.
You missed the important part. Legitimate.
I don't believe any. I mean, if we're going to go veering off into the weeds there, I don't believe any government on this earth is legitimate. But
okay.
Setting that aside,
yeah.
Israel exists and exists by right of force, same as every other country does.
Oh, someone just told me I got to turn my mic up. Give me 2 seconds here. Feel free to jump in, everyone. We got a lot of people listening in on YouTube.
Yeah. I'll just say, since it seems like we're getting into some of the pessimistic stuff, I'll mention one of the other difficult parts is from the perspective of Israel and Western observers, it's really difficult to understand just how governments under Hamas or Hezbollah could work. And it seems to be stated pretty unequivocally that we're, on our side, we're willing to securitize against it, right? And this is, again, the theoretical lens, so I'm not saying that much right now, but, and so like an example of this, maybe just like there's a lot of reference points, which is one of the optimistic parts of this. If we look at the Houthis in Yemen, we can see this really large, almost like we would say unnecessarily large parliamentary system. And so there's this belief almost that, look, you need to have representation in the Congress, but when it comes down to it, it just doesn't matter, right? If you have a parliamentary house or whatever it is, when you're making policy, everyone gets a voice, but if you decide it doesn't matter, then you just dissolve the government and, it's whatever it is. And I think you can look elsewhere. You can look at like modern day Iraq and you can say, well, look, this is a central government who has enormous revenues. They're at least, right now they're on speaking terms, with Kurdistan. There's not really problems with extremism that anyone would notice in Iraqi society. And so, the sort of lazy man's jumping into this point for the Lebanese context is that, Israel appears right now like they're operating a military state, so they have their own problems. And I think a lot of Israelis agree. From the side of Lebanon, I don't know if it was Kamala Harris or something, or Trump or Biden. Someone said, there's a lot of like prongs or something. Just looking at there's almost like a hierarchical leadership structure is what it looks like. It looks like they're doing things that are anti-democratic. And so just understanding how, again, back into the process and milestones over 60 days, understanding how conversations happen, when we get something that we can latch onto, and we can latch onto it because it's like most people would agree it's a good thing.
Yeah, I have a problem with the idea that Israel is a military state. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I don't have my laptop up or anything right now, but I believe over the last decade there's been a lot more powers given or taken away from courts, constitutional weakening and power shifting over to presidential, PM, defense, security, a lot of these things. And so I think some people see, maybe it could just be a product of regional conflict. But people see, a lot of Israeli economic supremacy, especially relative to their peers, like it's second to none. It's very good. They see that economic sort of aspect of things, if that makes sense, as at some point fueling political motions that go towards securitization. It hasn't been talked about as much in the last 14 months.
Calling them a military state is a really bold claim because, they're a democratic republic, right? With a parliamentary system.
100%, yeah.
So I think that's very bad slang and propaganda to call them a military state. I don't know if that's common what people say in the media or who are anti-Israel or whatever, but it does seem like it has a lot of anti-Israeli sentiment to it.
Yeah, it wasn't meant that way. So sorry to anyone on YouTube or in the Discord as well. It wasn't meant to be anti-Israeli. I think it's a more of a statement of just how some decisions have been viewed to be made versus, a complete open democracy like we have in the US in the past.
Oh, but we would have to get specific, right?
For that too. Yeah.
Yeah. If we were going to say we're going to start saying that some parts are a military state because there's overstep, there's military overstep, and that is uprooting democracy. I would want to know the specific issues, I guess. I know you said you didn't have your laptop open, but I think some people also look at issues like there's a mandatory military service, and sometimes that can seem like it's that to some people. They might think that that's strange and makes it a military state, but there are good reasons for why Israel has this, and it has to do with how they are viewed and treated in the Middle East by people that hate them and want to wipe them from the map.
I think people that aren't just looking also at casualty numbers.
Yes, I can blame them, TiVo. They're murderous, disgusting terrorists if they think that Israel and Jews need to be wiped from the land. That's a disgusting philosophy.
That sounds rather racist against Arabs and Muslims.
You think that's racist? When did I mention race?
He mentioned terrorists who specifically are out to kill people, so you made the connotation that they were Arab and Islamic, not him.
I said Islamic.
No, I'm pointing out I'm defending your point, Travis, that he made the connotation, not you.
Yeah.
You specifically pointed out terrorist.
Yeah, I mean, you drew the line.
I think the implication is there.
Pretty
strongly.
I think you're doing what many people do to Sam Harris in that they call Sam Harris racist because he's hard on Islamic ideas that are completely, for example, anti-Jew. And I think it's evil. I really do.
Yeah, but I understand Cyborg's point. Like if we look at just the success of Hamas, if we look at the success of Hamas's campaign in objective terms, if we look at something like just like social media usage or something, I think it's easy enough to call Al-Qassam or Hamas as the governing body, a terrorist group, and you can also say that there seems to be some sort of norm or societal value outside of on just the policy that they hold. And again, this is something that doesn't seem to ever cross into Israeli borders. I think it's something to, I don't know why I'm talking right now.
No, it's fine. That's what we do here. We talk it out.
If I can add one point.
Come on in. Yep.
I heard Tivo talking before, and I don't want to straw man you, Tivo, but I want to point out that one of the talking points that you made that I think I just struggle a lot around this whole situation is that we're talking about an area that has been at war for roughly like 1,000 years at least. The holiest of lands for the globe, right? The two most dominant religions have been warring over this piece of land. And this idea that complex global social dynamics and religious warfare that's been dominating for so long could just be wrapped up by a single phone call from one person, to me is incredibly naive, right? Like if we're going to solve this problem, we can't come at it with
Israeli offensives in Lebanon have been called off by a call from Reagan, by a call from various presidents over the decades. And all they had to do was call and say, stop. And immediately Israel stops.
Can progress be made by phone calls? Absolutely. Everything we do is going to be done by language. But the point is this idea that the whole thing could instantly end because one person just demands it. There are forces that work here that won't allow that.
Israel exists because of the support of the United States. Israel could not exist without
wrong.
I think Israel
endless support of the United States.
That's wrong.
Israel has a thriving.
One thing.
Israel has a thriving democracy, and like there's parity in terms of.
Israel could not exist without the United States. We like basically pay for their military entirely.
Well, I agree that it's difficult to deny that the U.S. funds aspects of Israel's securitization. It's also difficult to imagine from a realist perspective what the world might be like without Israel that has had the U.S.'s support since 1948, and in 67 or whatever it was. And as they continue, again, I think the point is that exchanging political support it can be aggression, but it's also diplomacy.
I also wanted to say that I think the claim that was absurd to me that I think Cyborg might have been getting at was when Tivo said that the two-state solution would be solved with a phone call from the United States. And I think that is
correct.
Drastically unreasonable to think that could happen. We have all the evidence in the world to show you that Israel has pursued the two-state solution.
Israel hasn't pursued a two-state solution.
Really?
In fact, Rabin even admitted as much in the 90s when the supposedly we got closest that we ever were. He said we have given them less than a state.
Wasn't Hamas's rise to power?
I want to read some.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to read some information.
Yeah, well, Hamas came to power because Arafat's nationalism didn't work.
Hang on, I just want to read some information here. So Israel has
which is unfortunate.
Israel has pursued two-state solution at various points in its history, although the level of commitment and the political complexity surrounding it have varied over time. So here's the historical context, and I'll go to, this is important. So United Nations Partition Plan 1947, the concept of a two-state solution,
which Israel broke,
originated with the United Nations Partition Plan, which proposed separate Jewish and Arab states in mandatory Palestine. The Jewish leadership accepted the plan, but Arab leaders rejected it, leading to the 1948 Arab-Israeli
Why should Arab leaders have accepted it?
Well,
why should Palestinians have accepted that in the first place?
I'm trying to see if your claim that they have not offered a two-state solution is true. So right off the bat, I'm at 1 of 7. You're wrong. Right off the bat. So
I'm not in favor of a two-state solution.
Well, you said,
Personal.
Yeah, but your claim was that Israel has not offered a two-state solution or pursued one, right? So
no, Israel has not pursued a two-state solution.
So you don't. So you believe that this is some kind of propaganda, the United Nations Partition Plan, or
that was the United Nations Partition Plan, and furthermore, there's a reason Arabs didn't accept it.
Yes, there's a reason why they rejected it, but
I wouldn't accept it either if I had been Palestinian.
Your claim was that Israel hasn't offered a two-state solution. Your claim maybe should be that they haven't offered a two-state solution that the Arabs felt was fair, or the Palestinians felt was fair. Post-1697 era, after the Six-Day War in 1967, Israel captured the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and East Jerusalem. The fate of these territories has been central to discussions of the two-state solution ever since. Oslo.
Look, it's easy. Okay, here's my point. It is easy to ask for concessions from our enemies. What concessions is Israel willing to offer? What concessions is the United States willing to offer? If you can tell me what concessions we're willing to give, what we're willing to give up, then I will probably give more credence to what you say.
So you want to know what concessions has Israel ever offered to Palestine?
No. I want to know what concessions the United States and Israel would be willing to offer now. Just to offer, not with conditions, but to just offer.
It sounded like you were starting off by saying they have never offered concessions.
Who fields the offer, TiVo? Hamas or the Palestinian people?
Right. Well, right now.
I'm not asking what Hamas can offer. I'm not asking what Palestinians can offer. I'm asking what can we offer?
Yeah,
what can our side offer? What do we say we will give this up?
To who? Who is the person that we are talking to in that scenario?
So the old scheme that failed.
Take your pick. Take your pick.
Hold on. Let's dig in on this. TiVo, who are we making the offer to? Give me specific options, specific actors. Who do I make the offer to concede to if I'm going to give any concessions? No. Don't tell me to pick my actor. I'm asking you, what actor do I have to choose from? If you give me some options, I'll try. Who am I choosing between?
One second.
Are you ChatGPTing so you can figure out who?
No.
That's fine.
Fuck you.
That's fine if you do. No, we're not going to do that.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you make it sound like it's so easy. TiVo, I'm just trying to ask.
Yeah, TiVo, you're on a 5-minute penalty. We don't have to say fuck you when people
TiVo, I mean,
ask if you're. If people are asking if you're looking at the information, I have ChatGPT open in front of me all the time.
And that's to be clear. That's fine. My point is that if it seems like such an easy thing, you would think it would be top of mind. And my point is simply that it's not top of mind because there isn't an easy person to offer to, because there is no easy Palestinian leader that Hamas isn't going to intercept or that isn't in some way influencing, right? So to say that we're conceding to somebody, aren't we really conceding to Hamas more than likely?
But this has to go back to milestones, right? If you think of what can actually happen in 60 days, like I think there's a conversation that where is the Palestinian National Authority? Where is the where are the old parties in Lebanon? Why did your economy crash in the first place?
But just to be clear,
that's
Nate,
not what anyone wants.
We were just talking about Gaza there and the two-state solution, and there is no ceasefire in Gaza for 60 days.
No, I understand that, and I think part of the reason is the same issue though, that if I think if it was just as easy as saying, well, if this makes sense democratically, people in Palestine were cool with getting tax rebates and stuff like this from Israel. They were cool getting aspects of globalization dropped into their economy. Everything's hunky dory or whatever. There wouldn't have been a problem in the first place. I don't know if that makes sense, but
I'm looking it up though. The PLO has accepted the concept of a two-state solution since 1982, starting from the failed 2000 Camp David summit with Clinton. Israel has gone against this as part of the two-state solution. Also formed the basis of an Arab peace initiative. 2006 2008 peace offer and the 2013 to 2014 peace talks. So it does look like there have been specific factions on both sides that have maintained or fought for a two-state solution at any point in time. I don't think Israel right now is even close to offering a two-state solution, though.
Well, right now they've been clear they're not going to offer a two-state solution to a terrorist state.
Yep.
And there's not multilateral support either for it.
Right.
Just to be clear.
Yeah.
But the claim was by TiVo that Israel has not offered such a thing, or has not even. I mean, then we were starting to get into concessions, right? But
well, it does look like the last time that Israel offered it was like 1967 or 1997. 1967, sorry. So, since inventory.
So no. We have.
When was the last time Israel?
Yeah, at the Annapolis conference, 2007, 2008. We have the 2009 Barlin speech. So in the speech of Barlan University, Prime Minister Netanyahu endorsed the concept of a two-state solution for the first time, contingent on Palestinian recognition of Israel as a Jewish state and demilitarization of a future Palestinian state. So one could argue that that. Oh
yes, but I'm looking at that time. Omer presented a proposal to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, which this is only. It wasn't something foundational. It was only at one time a proposed idea, right? So that's what I'm seeing with Mahmoud Abbas. Everything that happened with that was only a proposed idea. It never even got to the point of talks to solidify it. Yeah, the proposal became when Olmert left shortly after their not comparable.
The claim is the claim wasn't that there has been talks even, but what is leadership saying they are open to? Okay, in 2009. Netanyahu says two-state solution contingent on those two factors: demilitarization, and then the outcome was, and Palestinian recognition of Israel as a Jewish state. Outcome was, while this, no formalized offer followed, and subsequent policies under Netanyahu expanded Israeli settlements.
We'll see. I'm looking at a Reuters article right now.
And then John,
Israel categorically rejects international dictates regarding a permanent settlement within the Netanyahu, in a statement published following a call with U.S. President Joe Biden, Israel will continue to oppose a unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state. So I mean, it seems like if we want to get rid of everything in the past, like obviously right now, Bibi is not on board with a two-state solution.
Yeah, well, but that's not what we were talking about, Scott. We were talking about like this caller TiVo mentioned that they've never been down with the two-state solution, or they never offered. There's a vast history of this.
Oh yeah, they've offered. Yeah, they've offered. Yeah,
and then there was a dance around there saying like, well, like I wouldn't have accepted that. Oh, so they did offer. So I'm trying to sort out the claims here.
I didn't think that Israel had ever made a politically viable two-state solution offer, but again, that could be wrong.
Yeah, when you say politically viable, that's like I would say they have.
Ooh. I would definitely have to go down into the nitty gritty of the actual agreement, right? Because we could look at what's going on with Ukraine and Russia right now and be like, Russia's never agreed to a solution, but they might have agreed to a solution that just says, oh no, you're just going to give us Ukraine, right? And is that viable to Ukraine? I don't think so. I don't think.
Yeah, I know that's
coming
why,
from the basis.
Yeah, we weren't
like,
even debating. We weren't even debating viability. We were debating whether or not this actually did occur. And
it's been offered. It's been offered. Yeah,
I think it's demonstrably true.
So
that this has happened.
I'd like to present a point.
Yeah.
So I'd like to present a point on the viability of a two-state solution at the current stage in time. And at the current stage that we're at, in the history of Palestine and Israel, there are 500,000 Israeli settlers that live in the West Bank, and that's excluding East Jerusalem, where an additional 220,000 Jewish settlers reside in East Jerusalem. Now, this is illegal under international law, but is funded and militarily supported by the Israeli government. This is just true. It is illegal under international law. So my point is that there is no viable way to establish a Palestinian state without the ethnic cleansing of these Jewish settlers, which is obviously immoral.
So first of all,
what I don't understand about the two-state solution is if you're trying to establish a Palestinian state, where do you do that? Because there's no land. Area C is dominated by the settlers, and even B and A and B around Hebron, and all these Palestinian Nablus, all these Palestinian cities have Israeli settlements right outside of them. So I guess that's my point that I like to present.
Yeah, so you're talking about the international law perspective of the settlements, and so we have the Fourth Geneva Convention, Article 49 prohibits the transfer of an occupying power's civilians population into the territory it occupies. Many international bodies, including the United Nations, argue that Israeli settlements in the West Bank violate this provision, as the West Bank is considered occupied territory under international law. In 2004, the International Court of Justice issued an advisory opinion stating that the settlements are illegal under international law. Here are the UN resolutions. United Nations Security Council Resolution 242. This was in 1967, calls for the withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in the Six-Day War and emphasizes the inadmissibility of acquiring territory by war. United Nations Security Council Resolution 2334, this was in 2016, reiterated that Israeli settlements in the West Bank have no legal validity and constitute a flagrant violation of international law. And then so that's the international law perspective, but there's also the Israeli legal perspective here. So the domestic legal view Israel disputes the characterization of the West Bank as occupied and instead refers to it as disputed territory. Israeli law does not consider settlements illegal, and we'll open the conversation about this because this is interesting. Israeli law does not consider settlements illegal. They often established with the approval of the Israeli government, and some are retroactively legalized even if initially built without formal authorization. Historical claims. Israel asserts
that's we got
two more. Yeah, we got 2 more points, and then we'll get into it. Israel asserts historical and biblical ties to the West Bank, referring to it as Judea and Samaria. It also argues that the West Bank was not under the sovereignty of any recognized state prior to 1967, as Jordan's control from 1848 to 1967 was not widely recognized internationally. And one last thing, security arguments. Israel often justifies settlement expansion on security grounds, claiming that maintaining a presence in the West Bank is critical to its defense. So let's get some weigh-in on these settlements.
I'll go right off the bat, and I think I've watched many of those videos. I highly doubt Don will disagree that there are Israeli settlers who are basically some fucking fascist piece of shits who are fucking terrorizing people.
Obviously, that's not a question.
Yeah, exactly. But isn't it weird that the Israeli government would then come and say, "Oh no, well that's okay"? Like I just think that's a problem.
I don't think that they're saying that's okay. The settlement issue in Israel itself is a very contentious issue.
What about former Defense Minister Yoav?
Let Don.
When was the last time it was contentious?
Guys, we're gonna move around. Don has the floor, and we'll pass the mic around.
Sorry, my bad. I apologize.
No worries.
Yeah, so Bibi's government, as you all pointed out, is obviously doesn't have an issue with it. But when you look at life in Israel, opinions of people in Israel, these are not basic, just like everyone agrees down the belt. Yeah, let's go. Let's do our thing. Let the settlements thrive. They look at a lot of them as crazies. Right. They don't consider, we're talking about 500,000. And a lot of these 500,000 live very close to the Green Line. They don't go deep versus the ones that go deep in. There's a lot of issues there. There's a lot of differences. Not all settlers are created equal, quote unquote. And within mainland Israel, opinion about them is not like you're considered a weirdo. You go live in a settlement. Like, this is not something like if you're from Tel Aviv or Netanya. It's not like it's not looked at as a very positive thing.
Hey, Don, I don't know if you have any information, but why do people go what's the motivation for someone? It sounds like just an ordinary person. It sounds like a dangerous activity. It sounds like it's less economically fruitful, definitely, than living in Tel Aviv.
No. The economy is a really strong factor for that. So my parents grew up in Tel Aviv, and they wanted a place to raise a family. Now, Israel's expensive. It's very hard to live in Israel. It's not easy. You don't just live in luxury and have tons of money. So they ended up right across the town right next to the Green Line. They justified it for themselves for saying, well, we're not really going into their territories far in, and Kfar Qasim is right next to us. And, I had a Palestinian nanny growing up when I was a kid. So their driver was an economic one. They wanted to be able to have a house, a normal house. They didn't, wanted to be able to afford stuff. So that's kind of where that move went. There are those who go really deep in, the agitators who will set up different encampments or lobby really strongly for specific pre-existing settlements to expand, which is mostly what Israel government approves. They're not really building new settlements at the moment.
I do have a question, Don. What would you guess is the amount of people who are going really far in who actually hold American passports?
A lot. A lot of those fuckers.
A lot. Exactly.
That's the worst. I mean, I think the spokesperson for the city of Hebron, this American guy, you can look him up on YouTube. He's an absolute psycho called Yishai Fleischer. And he is this is the example of the radicals. This is, if you want to find the Magites, this is what they are in the equivalent in Israel.
So I want to bring our new friend back in. Marcy, go ahead.
So I have some polling data that relates to the opinions in Israel, and this is from PewResearch.org. if anyone cares. It's from June 2024. So among Israeli adults, 40% says the West Bank settlements help the security of Israel. 35% says it hurts. And 21% says it doesn't make a difference. So I would wager to say that popular opinion in Israel is largely and this is it's the question literally says who say the continued building of Jewish settlements in the West Bank is helps the security of Israel. So it's decent language. It's not asked. So it's pretty neutral.
But you showed that it's a contentious issue. Right, about you said 40%.
But I'm saying that it's a majority.
30 something and 21 something don't know. That shows literally a contentious issue in the country.
Right, but it's a majority by a very wide margin. When for example someone wins in an election, when you win by less than 1%, you say that's a close election. But when someone wins,
can you say the stats again? Maybe I misheard the stats.
Well, I think
Israeli adults, it's 40% says it helps. Okay. And Israeli adults says 35 says it hurts. And also, I mean, it breaks it down by.
But 40 to 35. And then a bunch of they don't know whether it helps or hurts.
That's a 5%.
5%. But you also have to look at the
majority. The polling data is about whether or not they believe this enhances national security. Right, we got to be. That poll is about whether or not it enhances, because you could believe that it enhances national security, but that it's not a right thing to be doing. Right.
Correct.
Because you can create. You can be like, oh yeah, if we armed the entire southern border of Canada with freaking sharks with lasers on their laser beams on their
laser
heads,
beams.
It's going to enhance national security, maybe. But I just think that poll question actually isn't as. I
just think it proves that it's contentious. It sounds like a contentious.
Well, it's not contentious though either.
I have more polling data.
If you look at like the actual what experiences people in Israel have gone through as well, and this isn't. I'm not trying to be an Israeli apologist, but you have war with Arafat. You have terrorist attacks through the First Intifada. You have still
3,000 Palestinians were killed versus, I believe, only 500. Actually, less than 500, I believe, is right.
All right,
so it's a very disproportionate violence. I'm not saying that any sort of terrorism is justified.
Let's not forget about Ben Stern. Come on now.
Yeah. Let's let Nate finish. Nate, if you had more of your point there, go ahead.
I just think when you get parents involved, if you think about the actual social makeup, right, and that has to apply on both sides. Some people don't understand that fact either, but this is part of the nonsense of everything becomes propaganda, everything becomes a different language. Is if you actually talk about what what experience does an Israeli family have settling on the border? What experience does a Palestinian have, whether they agree with that or not? They're living in the West Bank. What experience do they have if you see basically any critical sector of the economy is, it's either outsourced or insourced, or it's a nonprofit, or it's funded in this way versus that way? So I'm not negating, and I'll wrap this up in a second here, but this is how important I think this is if you I'm not trying to argue with the polling data. The data is, I'm sure it's accurate. But I just don't think you can actually, once again, you can actually put politics in the middle of that.
Yeah. Okay. So we have we have a few new people in the room, and we are talking about this ceasefire. Just in case anyone has anything to add, Don, did you have something to add about the ceasefire?
About the ceasefire? Yeah. I mean, I just hope it goes through. I hope that that the fight in the north can stop and the residents can go back to living there. And I hope that this lasts a long time and Hezbollah goes back to the Litani River, and the Lebanese government is able to have its military actually operate there without Hezbollah overshadowing it, an actual military run by the government. And I hope that's what I hope. Really,
right? So they
I hope it goes through. I'm excited for it.
Well, yeah, it's 60 days, and what do you think about the U.S. and France being involved in the ceasefire negotiations?
Whatever works, whatever gets things done properly, I'm all for it. Anyone who's involved in it is okay with me. Yeah.
Sorry, Travis. I don't mean to interrupt. But we had talked. I'm curious to get Don's opinion. We had talked about over 60 days. We had talked about like one of the things that's going to happen is there has to be some sort of diplomatic milestones. I don't know if you wanted to say something about either your confidence level or like just being, having family in or from Israel. If you have ideas about like what you think instows pessimism versus optimism or something like that.
I think the easiest place to talk about it from the Israeli perspective, and I think Israel will be okay with any permanent ceasefire. It can feel assured that Hezbollah cannot recreate the infrastructure that it's created in the past 15 years. I think that's, as long as that's met and Israel feels comfortable with that, there's going to be no issue with the ceasefire. I think that's from the Israeli perspective. I think from the
I was gonna ask, is Israel like fine with the PLO now? Because the PLO still exists.
Well, there's the PA. The PLO is more of like the PA.
The PA is a non-existent organization.
Yeah, the PLO is non-existent.
The PLO
members are now integrated into the Fatah and some of them into Hamas.
Yeah, the PLO turned into the PA, and
and then the militancy, like it doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, but so the Palestinian Authority, like what is Bibi's consideration of the PA as it regards to them taking control of the government of Palestine if we set up a two-state solution?
PA for a two-state solution? Listen, I don't think Bibi's government wants a two-state solution, so at the moment, I don't think they're interested in even broaching that topic. Especially so long as the Likud is beholden to like Shas and like Otzma Yehudit. There's nothing that's not happening, right? So
because I think I talked to this before. You agree with me, like a two-state solution is probably the best response, right? The best answer. I thought we.
It's not viable at this point. It's not viable.
It's not viable. It's not going to happen right now.
It cannot exist without a mass ethnic cleansing of Jewish settlers. I don't agree with settling.
Oh that's not true. Like
no, but no 1 second.
Palestinian state, you would have to remove settlers from areas.
No, you wouldn't, because you could have Palestinians who were a part of Israel, and you guys that have Jews who are part of Palestine, right? That
is true, but
like, it would just be a two-state solution. Like there'd just be
who do you
two
think
states.
these settlers want to live under? Like which government?
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, 1 second. If we're imagining a two-state solutions across the 67 borders, we're literally thinking like, what if Germany became Prussia again? That's obviously not where the borders are going to be at this point.
Correct.
It's not going to be.
Correct.
It's not. It's just like even during Oslo, it wasn't going to look.
Ideologies of plural identities, right? We can archive.
Where are the borders supposed to be?
They got to decide on them. They got to decide on them.
Well,
both parties got to decide on them.
That's a thing. Like a solution would be like, obviously West Bank is going to go Israel, right? And then you would put in like all Palestinians, and you could expand some territory out of Israel for Palestinians in Gaza. Well, West Bank. I mean, because right now you have this group of people broken up. Jesus Christ!
One sec.
Right.
Wise, you're a little muffled, so it's and Scott was just finishing his point. Then we'll go to Wise Ape and try to get his mic working.
Yeah. I mean, like I can pull up a map right now of where the West Bank and Gaza are. Right. So these are two like areas that are completely cut off in the middle by Israel. So right, if we're gonna have a two-state solution, you're not gonna have a state that's this is a state over here and a state over here, and they're one state, but you have a state just cutting you right down the middle, right? So we need to consolidate all the people into an area, right? Yeah, like there would have to be a cleaving off of an area. No, it doesn't require. It doesn't necessarily.
That is necessarily by definition.
No.
So
it's not a cleansing because you're.
Let's let him make the point.
That is necessarily what ethnic cleansing means. Can I present to you the definition of ethnic cleansing?
Well, let's hear your point.
That would be the moving of
right now.
Ethnic cleansing is the systematic forced removal of an ethnic, racial, or religious group from a given area with the intent of making the society ethnically homogeneous. Your point would be to make an ethnically homogeneous Palestinian society and an ethnically homogeneous Jewish society.
Oh, but
that is a fundamentally
that's
not
what the state of Israel wants to do.
But,
even if it was
that's not even what I stated.
People in Israel don't. At least you're a crazy psycho. You're not advocating for the removal of 2 million Palestinians from your state, 2 million Arab citizens.
Correct.
Yeah. No,
that's
you can remove the ideology, but you don't have to remove the individuals, right? We can archive these ideologies. They are not the identities of the people, right? They're pseudo identities.
So
this is why I said you could have Palestinian Israelis and Israeli Palestinians.
Exactly. Scott was saying if they draw the line, then there happens to be some Jews within the Palestinian border. They can stay there and live there. They don't have to be cleansed out or vice versa, right? So, but I want to get why is what is your point about ideology? Are you there, brother? Oh, Wise fell asleep.
Yeah, must have fell.
Go ahead. Wise ape. No, we lost him. Anyways, who else has a point to make?
Well, I'd like to present a practical solution.
Okay.
To the current state.
Well, can I? Sorry.
Obviously. Oh no, you can go first. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something because Wise 8 mentioned ideology, and I think it's a great point. Just because, again, this is me being a political science nerd. It seems like also, just as stuff is entered into the mainstream, people, like a lot of people in the West, even people who support Palestine, don't know about Arabic socialism and don't know why like Yasser Arafat also tried to destroy Israel several times. And they don't necessarily know about like Zionism and its anarchist and communist and sort of idealist roots. And so, I think there's always a lot of good reasons that like people, I don't know if it has to do with the ceasefire, but ideology seemingly has gotten, what does it actually mean these days?
Yeah, we're dealing with people, and for whatever reason, we like to apply the identity of these people as Jews or Palestinians or something. This is nonsense. We can archive the idea of Judaism or the idea of Islam. We don't need to adopt and give them these pseudo identities and say, no, this is what you are. You have to be this, right? They don't have to be this. They can learn a new language. They can learn a method of existing. Their biology is not contingent upon this ideology.
Well, if you're talking about anti-Semitism, I totally agree with you.
The native people, you can change their language. Sounds very similar to what we did to the Native Americans.
Well, not in that. I'm not advocating for that. That's like, but in a way, almost, right?
No, and I think almost
does that mean we get to de-Likud Israel as well?
Is still a great answer.
I mean, if we're gonna de-Hamasify Palestinians, does that mean we get to de-include Israel as well?
That's not the same thing.
Hamas exists as a result of Israeli incursions. Now, actually,
I think there's a point here. I think there's a point.
I'm not saying make them like us. I'm saying we also have to change.
Let's Scott.
If you look at in the 80s.
Okay, Marcy, finish your point.
I believe it was the 80s and the 90s. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. My reading is a little. It's I'm a little rusty on my reading, Palestinian history. But I believe in the 80s and 90s. Benjamin Netanyahu himself orchestrated the giving of massive amounts of funds to fund Hamas, to build up the not only the military wing, but also the social wing of Hamas. So this is actually a movement to destroy and disrupt Palestinian national liberation movement. So we're talking about.
They were disrupting the PLO. They were They were disrupting the PLO. So if you're saying, them trying to disrupt the PLO was a bad thing, then sure.
That's not my argument.
That's not your argument. So you're saying that because of actions that happened. You're saying that because of the actions of Israel. The actions that Israel partook helped for the development of Hamas, just like the actions that many nations around the world take that and the backfiring or having
the direct giving of funds or
giving funds.
Yes,
I mean,
like
Bibi wasn't.
We're not talking about a reaction. We're talking about a direct orchestration.
I mean,
this is
obviously,
obviously,
that's like saying that Iran funding of the Houthis created the Houthis. You're not wrong.
One second. 1 second.
Oh my God.
If you talk about
the U.S. supported fucking,
I know. No one is saying. I
if
know.
You talk about, if you talk about Israel funding the ideological and political outcomes that that Palestine eventually is going to reach, you're already saying that what they're capable of doing is basically determining. What they're doing is they're determining the ideology.
Hold on, real quick. Here is the drastic mistake that's being made: is saying that when Israeli does this, we know what's going to happen in 20 years. The same way, like when the United States was like helping Afghanistan against the Russians, we knew what was going to happen with. God, I'm forgetting his name.
The Taliban didn't come from nowhere. You know what I mean?
Not Saddam Hussein. The fucking Al Qaeda guy.
Al Qaeda.
Osama bin Laden.
Osama bin Laden. That'd be like saying like the U.S. knew we were putting Osama bin Laden in power when we supported Afghanistan in the 1980s. It's a ridiculous thing, right? So we have to understand people come to conclusions based on the information that we have, and we can look at that information. We're going to have to make a decision based off of this, and regardless of what happens 20 years later, there's nobody who's going to predict what's going to happen 20 years later, right? Like you do recognize this, right?
The results of these actions were very, very immediate.
Yeah, the results of the actions are very bad. Yeah.
Many protests. A lot of these protests, I mean, if you're talking about the Great Walk of Return, which is something that curdles my stomach to even think about, because of the Great Walk of Return, this was before any recent incursions into Gaza. This is before the 2021 war. Israeli soldiers, special snipers, deliberately targeted crippled, and children, and they shot the kneecaps deliberately shot, and this is Israeli snipers who are professionally trained, highest trained snipers deliberately picked to disable deliberately Palestinians who went and protested at the border.
When did this happen? I want to fact check all of this.
So this is I don't remember if this is 2018. It's the Great Walk of Return.
Yeah, and Palestinians.
That's right.
Palestinians.
You guys can just go ahead
on the back. Palestinians put the bombs in the back of children to walk up to a
that was.
gate.
I don't think that happened. I don't think that happened, Scott. I don't think that's what happened.
Yeah.
I think he's making a joke. I don't think he's seriously.
There's also
there's also
I'm sorry. That was
walked into Israel.
I've heard some insane things.
There's also people that willingly walked into Israel with knives, with guns, with bombs. And this is, again, I'm not, like, I always preface this with this isn't Israeli apologetics. But it appears like there's no space where aggression is viewed as politically neutral.
Marcy, you gotta
look, that's why I said let's archive these ideologies. We're not just throwing them away, but we're putting them in a museum. So the reason why people hold on to these things is because of their inexposure, right? So it's or their lack of education. So if they were more educated, like with ChatGPT, if they had if they had watches strapped to their wrist, right, that would update them and inform them on how to live, then in a way,
strapped or locked to their wrist.
That's sort of determined. Like, once you realize what it is, you'll want it on your wrist. Like, you'll...
Good answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have information on the 2018, 2019... Oh, sorry.
I do want to hear... Nate, I want to sort out this sniper specifically shooting children in the kneecaps issue and see if it's true. Go ahead, Marcy.
Right. So this is documented in many cases, and actually, doctors who've worked in Palestine, and this isn't recent cases. There have been recent interviews on this, but doctors who've worked in Palestine have all separately, when they talk to each other, and brought up horrific injuries that are unique to Palestine and unique to the occupation, and so they all talk to each other. And I saw this recent interview, and they were so surprised that they all had experienced many of the same reoccurring, not all, many of them had experienced the same reoccurring injuries that showed up in children. And these were children cases. This is before Al-Shifa was destroyed.
This is this conflict?
Yeah, this is the
last 14 months.
So here again, you say all, but we need to what's really important is the percentage of people.
Well,
is it when you say all, is it 51%? Is it 70%? Is it 99%?
I have something
differentiation.
Here. Yeah, so I have that some doctors. The caller here was saying many, all, things like that. What I have is some doctors who have worked in conflict zones, including Gaza, have reported treating children with injuries consistent with sniper fire. For instance, a British surgeon recounted treating children with single gunshot wounds to the head, suggesting deliberate targeting. It's important to note that the situation is complex with conflicting narratives from different sources. Independent investigations and reports from reputable human rights organizations can provide more comprehensive insights into these incidents, but there is conflicting information.
I don't know if there's any U.S. veterans here, but I was just watching a documentary the other day, and they were talking about. And sorry, this isn't. Maybe this is more the horrors of war. They were talking about the different rules of engagement and how at times in the U.S.'s occupation in Afghanistan and Iraq, it was like open fire, and other times it was like you basically needed like a judge to sign off on anytime you were willing to fire a weapon. So I think, like, my opinion is if you kill a kid, then that's a war crime.
Well, I want everybody to think about where we are
not necessarily
technologically, right? We're in an age of nukes. We're in an age of AI. If we don't archive these ideologies, it's not going to serve us well, right? And by archiving them, it ensures that we're not shooting children in the kneecaps, right? There isn't a need for war.
So
it's a paradigm shift, because where we're at technologically in an age of nukes and an age of AI, nobody should be living under these ideologies.
Yeah, but when
what's causing the conflict in the
we're
first place.
talking about.
Yeah, Wise.
We've had nukes since the 40s.
but Wise, I know you're trying to make a point about that the bad ideas at the root of this all is what's to blame. Many people are fighting the war of ideas. It's part of what having conversations like this is all about. I get the point you're trying to raise here, but it's not on task with what we're currently talking about. We can have a conversation about, the anti-Jewish
efficacy
hate that exists in Islam. That's a big one.
I guess I'm just going for the end goal, I guess.
But also the anti-Islam hate in the Jewish community. Like, I mean, there's really a thing there.
A big difference.
There's nothing unique to the Jewish community about that. I would wager to say that is somewhat anti-Semitic. It is a widespread thing especially after 9/11. But even
I don't know. I don't know if you've seen videos of like Jews in Israel.
I literally stand. Yes, but those are Jewish Americans. I'm talking about Jewish Americans,
Scott,
who I'm friends with.
But the difference is that leadership in Israel is not trying to wipe Arabs from this planet. That's not their goal.
Yoav Gallant would definitely.
I don't think Yoav Gallant would agree with that if you ask him. I don't think he's going to agree with that if you ask him.
But we don't concern ourselves with the practices of Neanderthals, even though some of us have Neanderthal DNA. And I think we're not going to concern ourselves in the future with the practices of Judaism or the practices of Islam. It's just not going to be relevant, right? It's going to be archived, and we're going to appreciate it for history.
Hold on. MBS's platform is not let's wipe Jews off the face of the earth, right?
Whose platform?
Like that, I just don't
Whose
think
platform?
that actually.
What's MBS?
MBS. Mohammed bin Salam. No,
he's the king of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
he doesn't believe that either.
I didn't say
exactly.
That. I'm talking about the leadership in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, so I don't think the leadership in the Gaza Strip is all about like the destruction of Jews. Just the same way I don't believe the leadership.
They openly say it.
All leadership in Palestine is for the destruction of every Jew.
No,
that's not true.
Exactly.
No, that's not what I said.
That's where I'm going. Yeah.
I'm talking about Hamas.
And I think it misses a lot of information.
Hamas.
Can I say something?
Yeah, but there are multiple leadership organizations within Palestine, right? And
no one said otherwise.
we could look.
Yeah. We're talking about Hamas.
You can look at information.
I thought we were talking about Palestine versus Israel, and if we can't just look at like one leadership organization within Palestine and say this encapsulates all thought in Palestine.
Yeah,
I thought that's where we're going.
If you make it religious, you eliminate a lot of the political and economic and social information.
Oh, sorry, Nate. Go ahead.
I don't know if that makes sense. Yeah, just if you say it's all religious, you eliminate a lot of the political, economic information, and you also necessarily erase a lot of scholarship which has come out of both Israel as well as Palestine. And so I don't know if that makes it easier to understand, but I think if you turn it into another, a Sam Harris debate, then it's not a good thing.
Well, I think, Nate, that part of what you said is untrue. That if you turn this into a religious debate, it doesn't eliminate the politics, but because some of the states involved here, religion is at the top of the political hierarchy in enforcing the policies. So I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot intertwined, especially with like a group like Hamas, where their charters of what they want to do to the Jews is very clear, and
Well,
publicized.
Just hold on. To that point, Travis, would you say that Uyghurs have the same fundamental ideology that we need to destroy Israel? Like Uyghurs are just like Muslims in China that are being Uyghurs.
Oh yeah,
Uyghur.
Yeah, but why are we going
it's a
there?
Turkish word or a Turkic
I don't
word.
get what we're talking about.
Yeah, but because
It's
we're
not
talking
W.
about,
It's not the N word. It's a W.
because I'm pointing out how it's not religious, and it's like a lot of these situations that we are talking about are not fundamentally religious. Fundamentally, they're based on the well-being of the people within their own area, right?
Islamism here, Scott.
Yeah, but Uyghurs are Islams.
Yeah, that's fine.
Right?
No, they're not. But is there? I don't know anything about Uyghurs' government, right? It would be like saying that the issue, the fundamental issue in the Roman Catholic, in the Holy Roman Empire wasn't religion; it was a political issue. We can't separate them and say one is more fundamental than the other. They both play a serious role in the religious institutions in these societies, have serious political leverage and power. So you can't just so when you say one is fundamental to the other, I think it's it's like saying that at the end of the day, the real force here is the force of gravity when you can't determine that.
Okay. Oh, okay. So then what I would say is if it's a differentiation between religion or politics, how do you make that separation? How do you know it's about Muslim religion versus politics then?
Well, you
just said we can't determine it, right?
Can I answer the question?
Yep.
Okay, so it's almost like asking me, when do you determine that it's logic or emotion? These things operate simultaneously within the culture and within the political structure of the country.
Correct.
Okay, so at those moments where there is political justification, there also might be religious justification, and those who cannot make religious justifications aren't recognized by the body politic. In those societies, you can't really differentiate between the two in such an easy way. This is true in Palestinian society. This is true in Israeli society. It's less true in more secular societies like the United States, but Israel has a cohort of very religious Orthodox people who there's a lot of strife in the country with them.
But that's already spinning the conversation. That's already misconstruing data and political science. Well,
I think that bolsters my point of saying, like, we can look at people in other countries who are highly religious in believing Islam, but don't support these things, right? So it seems to me what's going on in Palestine has less to do with religion and more to do with just like basic facts on the ground.
No,
like
I think it has to do with fundamentalist
issues.
Religious doctrines that are encouraging certain groups to believe that they have the right to take the lives of other people for ethnic reasons. They're getting these commandments and rules from Scripture.
Yes.
Wait, Scott.
Hold on. I just
gotta get out.
Hold on.
Please, let me interrupt.
Scott.
Oh my God.
Scott,
no, like
you're going whole so much into the mic, no one can hear anything. So just hold on a sec.
I know.
You're gonna get your turn. You don't have to yell and
on to your point.
You don't. I know you want to. You're gonna get in. You don't have to yell about anything. So Scott, go ahead. The room is yours. I think he muted.
Yeah, okay, so Marcy. Who was next? Marcy wanted to say something, or was it Nate? Or Wise Ape? I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, I would just
say you were... Oh, sorry.
No, so let Marcy go. We haven't heard Marcy speak in a second. Then Nate, you can go.
Well, no. I feel like I've talked a bunch. Nate can definitely talk.
I don't feel like you've talked a bunch. So go ahead, say something.
Okay, well, I just wanted to make the case for apartheid in Israel. So the ICJ has recently, South Africa has brought the case of apartheid against, has levied the case of apartheid against Israel. If you guys don't know, from 1989 to 1994, South African apartheid state slowly crumbled as Western countries sanctioned it. And my parents were actually involved in the protests at a local university to get them to divest from South African apartheid. So apartheid was essentially is an Afrikaans word that literally means aparthood, apartheid, literally meaning like separation of groups. So basically, it was a by-law distinction that separated the ethnically African people from the Dutch and British colonists, and essentially gave them put the ethnic Africans into these things called Bantustans, which were mini nations essentially that South Africa recognized, but no other country did. Besides, I believe, one other country, which was Rhodesia, which was also an apartheid at the time. So my point is that currently in Israel, and specifically in the West Bank, there's a system of apartheid wherein certain roads, certain municipality buildings, certain areas are only allowed for Israeli citizens, and more specifically Jewish Israelis, so not Israeli Palestinians, who also have a different type of Israeli citizenship. They don't quite have the same rights, but they do have far more rights than West Bank citizens. So ICJ has launched this case, and it essentially says that the settlements into Gaza, the settlements were removed from Gaza in agreements in the 2000s, but the settlements into West Bank have created a deliberate system of apartheid which separates the Palestinian populations from each other and requires them to go through security checkpoints to go from, let's say, your mother lives in Nablus and you live in Hebron, and you want to go see her, you have to go through multiple checkpoints, which might take hours upon hours.
Are you talking about Amnesty International's ruling or
So Amnesty International, they released a report on apartheid, right, and so did Human Rights Watch.
Yep.
But also there's an ICJ case that South Africa launched.
Yep. Isn't that but the South African that's quite an old racial segregation issue, isn't it? Like that was
no. South Africa launched the case.
South Africa launched
Israel in the
sorry.
ICJ.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to make a quick point because the topic, the meta narrative here is about leadership, correct?
Wise, I think you're distracting from the point at large, and I think we can
I don't think
without consistency.
Not at all.
Okay.
Just to normalize
apologize
this,
then.
because this could be very relevant in the next 5 to 10 years. So when we play a game of chess or Go, if we want to win, we implement, the machines, the AI. And I don't know why this life.
This is not chess or AI. This is apartheid and deliberate ethnic
cleansing
we're talking about.
This is the game of life that we're playing.
Please be serious.
And we're doing all. I'm very serious. We're making these decisions by leadership, and it's when are we going to just forfeit leadership from the human side and put it into something more capable that can run simulations and think a lot better than we can.
I don't think it's on topic, brother. I love you, but I think we're going somewhere else. But I do think it's important. Like we can stay on this if people want, and it looks like the United Nations in March 2022. A UN human rights expert called on the international community to recognize that Israel's occupation of Palestinian territories amounts to apartheid as well. They, of course, disagree for the reasons I read earlier, for, how the border security is increased with the settlements in place. But we don't have to.
I also think that there's no legal definition of apartheid in that sense. clear,
yes, there is
distinct.
a legal definition.
No,
clear,
no.
UN definition. Yes.
Okay, but there's many different.
And furthermore, the case outlines.
Many people the way to define it. So, okay. So one of the challenges to that clear, distinct definition is the rights Palestinians who live in Israel possess. They have full legal rights in Israel. They vote. They have full legal rights in Israel.
This apartheid case includes the West Bank and does not include the Palestinian-Israeli
I'm moving forward. So there's two legal arguments with this problem. The first one is that if it is an apartheid, it recognizes the West Bank as Israeli territory, legitimate Israeli territory.
De facto,
if it
obvious.
Legitimate to be an apartheid. And the other way,
Marcy,
let the apartheid regime.
Marcy, let Don finish, and then we'll give you the floor. So Don finish, and then we'll go from Marcy.
And then on the other side, if it's not Israeli territory, it's an occupation. And I think that the idea that it's an occupation, a mismanaged occupation, a long occupation, is a much better claim and doesn't bring all the baggage that I think the term apartheid does into this equation, because it's something else. So we don't have to justify it. We don't have. I don't.
And I can give you my reasons for why.
All right, Marcy, go ahead. Apartheid. Yeah.
So very clearly, immediately, if you listen to the interview of Ta-Nehisi Coates, what he lays out is the separate roads that Palestinian Israelis have. So, for example, if you want to drive somewhere in areas A and B, you'll likely be on a Palestinian road. If you have a Palestinian license plate, you have to drive on the Palestinian roads. Now, if you have an Israeli license plate, you have to drive on the settlement roads. Also, there are checkpoints that are set up throughout the settlements and throughout areas A, B, and C, where if a Palestinian wants to, like I said earlier, for example, you want to see your mom in Nablus and you live in Hebron, you have to go.
It take an hour.
Exactly. Well, it takes multiple days in some circumstances.
Well, does that make it apartheid? Let's look at South Africa.
Well, it's a system of apartheid wherein, so in apartheid there was a very similar system where if you wanted to leave one of the Bantustans, this is one of the fake nations that South Africa constructed to consolidate all the ethnic Africans into. So basically, if you wanted to leave one of those places to go work in South Africa proper, you had to go through a checkpoint, and so they have to check your documentation.
Is there anything else?
Well, it's also deliberately, systematically separating the populations by law.
And there wasn't also a real way to challenge it in the courts.
So basically, it's nothing close to what was happening in South Africa, if you really look at it.
No, it's even worse. In currently
worse.
It's far worse.
Really?
Far worse.
I think you're narrativizing a lot of it. I think there's a lot of narrativization. And I think that while you hint at a lot of facts of true things, a lot of it also doesn't come down to the logistic sovereignty that many Palestinians do face and do have and fought for and have achieved.
Let's look at how blacks were treated in South Africa. It's nonsense. It's a nonsense argument. Look at the blacks, how they were treated. They were killed. They were beaten up.
What do you think happens?
They couldn't vote.
Palestinians?
They weren't in the Knesset.
When the IDF goes into the West Bank and murders little Palestinian children?
One at a time. Marcy, I want to let F around find out go. Welcome F around find out. I'm going to call you F. Let's let F go.
F's fine. Sorry about the name. I didn't know I'd be talking tonight. Yeah, well, I don't know a whole lot about what happened in South Africa, but what I have read paints an entirely different picture than what I read is going on in Israel. In Israel, I see 20% of the population are Arabs. They're citizens. They can vote, right? They're in the Knesset. I don't know, 10 something Arabs in the Knesset. Were there blacks in the government in South Africa? Were there blacks in the military in South Africa? Were they carrying guns? Were they allowed to own guns? Were they allowed to own property? Were they allowed to vote?
So we're talking about the West Bank, if you weren't aware. This is not Israeli proper. This is
so it's not, but then the line is it's no longer based on ethnic or national borders.
Is it really that justifying to delineate between apartheid and occupation? Either way, it's wrong.
Well, it's occupation.
It needs to stop.
I think
I don't think not all occupation is wrong.
Especially in terms.
Where did you get the idea that all occupation is wrong?
Yeah, it's not. It's not in this situation.
Either way, it violates sovereignty. It in some senses, it should weaken sovereignty.
Sovereignty of what? There's no state.
I mean, we're acting like 6 million Palestinians don't exist because they're not Israeli citizens.
They exist.
Who said they don't exist?
Sovereignty is a state.
Doesn't have a constitution.
They exist. There's no state. What do you mean sovereignty? What are you talking about?
I mean, the PA has authority over Area 1, Area A, and Area B, so some of B.
Yeah, if you're talking about a government and you have policy, you have laws, you have courts, you have all these things that resemble a government, just because it's not an internationally recognized government doesn't make it not a government. It's violating sovereignty.
Hamas is planning terrorist attacks out of the West Bank all the time. What government are you talking about?
No, they have a government. They have a government. They haven't had elections in a long time, but they have a government.
It's not an effective government in the West Bank. If you have Hamas, most of the people like Hamas in the West Bank, and they're running terrorist games out of it. So what government? Who's running it?
How is there supposed to be an effective government when Israel runs everything in the West Bank?
They don't run everything.
Israel runs everything in the West Bank. How?
Yes, they do. The Palestinians.
No, they don't.
The checkpoints
by the Israeli government.
They don't run everything in the West Bank. That's not true.
Yes, you just said they have a government. Now Israel runs everything.
We have a
be both ways.
The obvious example.
2 seconds. 2 seconds. Marcy, you gotta follow the moderation, or else it'll just be like Hamas in here. No,
there was a point for me to interject.
Yeah. No, you'll get your
whatever.
opportunity.
I apologize.
But I want to go on this. Everyone grab their facts. That's what matters here. Let's get the facts right regarding this issue, because it looks like we have a lot of disagreement in the room. Everyone listening on YouTube, make sure you drop a like and consider subscribing. We're having a conversation tonight about the Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire and, in general, Israel-Palestine conflict. And we hope you join us on Discord. We have conversations like this all the time. Sometimes we are not live on the air. There's the link for you to join our Discord server. Everyone's welcome, as long as you engage in good faith, helpful discourse. But yeah, well, let's
jump back to genocide.
Let's we're gonna get to the whether what's going on is a genocide or not. We'll get to that. That's a hot topic. But I want to start with Don. This issue that we're talking about here is what exactly was it? Was it Israel?
Does Israel controls everything in the West Bank? Was what I heard really loudly that I found just a shocking statement.
Right. So
it was shocking.
Let's let Don.
They have an operational government, right?
We're gonna let Don go first, and we'll go around the room, and then we'll open it up a little bit, because it sounds like there's a lot of disagreement here. So Don.
Had Don not heard that before?
No, I've never heard someone claim that all of Israel controls all of the West Bank. I've never heard that before.
So I guess what are some things, Don, you would go to demonstrate how that's not the case?
Well, the West Bank is divided into 3 areas: Areas A, Area B, Area C. Area A, which is 18%, has full control, full civil and security control by the Palestinian Authority. Area B of the West Bank, there's full civil control of the Palestinian Authority, while Israel has security control. And Area C, the 60%, has full Israeli civil and security control. Israel does not control everything in the West Bank, controls a majority of the West Bank, does not control everything in the West Bank.
Okay. Now,
can I make an argument? One quick sentence?
Yep.
One sentence? My strongest argument is what, I don't know who was saying, just said. He said they have an operational de facto government. They have courts. They have a police force. You can't say that and then say Israel's in total control. They're in 100% conflict. You got to be consistent a little bit when you start saying these things, That's my argument. Thanks.
All right. Thanks. Okay. Now, you guys heard the arguments in response to the claim that Israel controls everything in the West Bank. Now, I think it was TiVo, maybe Marcy made that claim. Maybe you're still collecting your information. But yeah, Marcy, go ahead.
The Palestinian Authority collaborates with IDF and the Israeli government on a regular basis.
Control doesn't mean shit when the other military is regularly incursioning into your areas. When they control, when you're split up into a million different pieces, and when you have to go through a million checkpoints, like this isn't meaningful control. They don't have a country. They don't have a country the way that you and I have a country.
Yes.
Whoever said they did.
But I don't think Don would disagree with you on that, honestly.
I don't.
Yeah, the Houthis don't have a country in the way that we have a country.
That's my argument. They don't have a country.
So like this idea that the PA has control over parts of the West Bank.
They do.
What control? Really? What?
They do have control.
No.
Yes,
when Israel can't just come
the
in
Israel government cannot just come in and be like, no,
that's
they
not
can't
meaning
just
full control.
The Israeli government cannot just come in and be like, today, guys, we're changing our sewage system. All of the taxes collected are going to. They can't do that.
Yeah, they can, and they do all the damn time.
Isn't it?
Yeah,
isn't sovereignty a spectrum?
Correct. They don't have full control.
Israel's collecting taxes in the West Bank when they want. Really? Damn. Can you have a site for that?
The government doesn't do this. You have like extremists who are like settling in these areas.
That's not the Israeli government.
Is the government collecting taxes from the settlers? Yeah, probably.
No, only in recognized settlements, not the guys who just go out and like doodle.
We're getting lost in stupid details that don't matter, and we're losing the idea that Palestinians do not have control over their own lives in their own country.
The claim was Palestine or that Israel controls the West Bank, but the Palestinian Authority has limited control over parts of the West Bank. The extent of its authority is defined by agreements between Israel and Palestine.
Whoop-de freaking do.
Organizing particularly the Oslo.
Agreements matter.
So I
care about.
Well, this is the thing. It is whoop-de-doo because we should like. How do you know that you're actually addressing the particulars of an issue? Because the details are what matters in an issue.
No,
if
you have the details. The details seem like a convenient cover to do nothing.
No, who says do nothing?
The cover is to pretend that the Arabs, didn't deny having their own state 5 separate times and chose war instead. That's convenient.
What I think is happening is people want to say that to make the Jews look like a bigger boogeyman than they really are.
Whoa! Who said anything about Jews?
Well,
Jews are not Israelis.
And if you keep it to
all Jews are not Israelis
around any of this.
Of course we are.
Hang on.
Of course we are.
Is there case law?
Jews aren't Israelis?
Yeah, I'm an Israeli citizen.
Me too.
No.
There are Christian Israelis and there are Muslim Israelis.
We're criticizing a state. We're criticizing a state.
To say Jews aren't Israeli, do people not see the problem with saying that? Like, Don, what do you think of that?
I see it.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong about this.
Majority of Jewish
really, all Jews are Israelis.
No, that's not what I said.
Hell.
Jews are Israelis.
You know what happens if Israel disappears? Does anybody know what happens to the Jews?
I have a huge problem with that.
Anybody know what happens to the Jews when Israel disappears? What happens to the Jews in the Middle East when Israel disappears?
They live
Christians are Canadian.
They live? No, they don't live. They die. They all die.
That's your Christian Zionist fantasy. Okay.
No, it's not. It's Hamas's charter, buddy. Read it.
Okay, so I think that we this reminds me of a lot of things I used to hear during BLM. When someone would say something about like BLM activists, but like, well, not all BLM activists are. A lot of black people aren't BLM activists, and I think what Travis is hiding is a way in which anti-Semitism is grounded by specific ways of talking, and a lot of times, a lot of tropes that historically have been used against Jewish people are repeated against the state of Israel. Like the trope
criticizing
of having,
Israel is not the same as criticizing
the trope
Jews
of having. No one said that. No one said that.
No.
And if that's going to be the accusation, then there's no conversation even to be had.
No one said that.
Saying that Israel is a Jewish state is incredibly anti-Semitic. To say
I
that
don't
an
think so at all.
apartheid state
I'm a Jew.
is
It's not
defined
anti-Semitic.
You think
a
that's
Jewish.
anti-Semitic?
Okay, well, I have Jewish
to say
friends, and
that?
they have very different.
Well, I'm
opinions.
Jewish, and I grew up in Israel. I don't know if
Nice,
it has anything to do with anything.
That's a perverted
Well, I have
idea
Jewish
of
friends
the
that
state
grew
of
up
Israel.
in America.
I have Muslim friends. It's Saudi Arabian friends. I don't get to talk about.
Listen,
Oh,
listen,
what
dude,
is
it's
Islamophobic and
I got
not.
black friends.
Yeah, I got black friends. I
it's-
can't be
it's-
racist. I got black friends.
It's a Jew
who's
off.
read
Yeah.
Hamas?
It's a. How many ethnic friends do you have, off guys?
Who's
Travis,
read
how many
Hamas's
ethnic friends do you
charter?
have?
Tons.
Who's read Hamas's charter? Anybody?
I have. It's disgusting. It's a disgusting
Yes. What about
piece of
Hezbollah's
shit.
1985 open letter? Who's read that?
I have. It's a disgusting piece of
What
shit.
about the Houthis and one of their inscriptions that literally says that they think all Jewish people are bad or whatever? Yeah, we know.
Yeah. What
Guess
about
what?
that?
Do you
What
know
about
what
that?
the idea? Guess what?
Guess what? It's
Okay.
fake. They're kidding.
Well, let's let
No,
him
no.
respond.
But guess what?
Guess what?
Imagine there is a state. Okay, imagine Saudi
Well,
Arabia.
it's the Jews'
which is the
fault.
Islamic
I hear it.
State.
It's the Jews' fault.
Or
Yes.
Iran.
Let's let Marcy.
The
give-
Yemenis are
Right.
getting screwed by Israel big time. They have to put it in a charter.
Let him
They
finish
wanna kill
speaking.
Jews.
Let him
Okay.
F around. Let him
F-
finish speaking.
F, I'm just giving you a quick timeout. It's not a 5-minute penalty. Don't worry about it. Marcy, go ahead.
So imagine Iran supported. Okay, so what am I talking about? I'm talking about Yemen. So let's say, so this is actually quite ironic. So I'll use Saudi Arabia because Saudi Arabia is extremely ironic in this example when talking about Yemen. If you don't know, Saudi Arabia conducted a genocide in Yemen quite recently. A genocide which
With the support of the
was
U.S.
conducted through, yeah, exactly. Supported through the U.S. Israel helped out even. So, and then they starved thousands of Yemenis.
Yeah.
My
Terrible.
point is, imagine if Iran, the Islamic State, right, the spooky, scary Islamic State. Imagine that was all you knew, and you were a Christian nation. And the Islamic State crashed bombs down upon you, killed your mothers, killed your father, killed your children, killed your brothers, killed your sisters. And imagine your charter said, fuck Muslims. I hate Muslims.
Yep.
Didn't drop a single bomb
You
in
say-
Yemen. What are you talking about?
I unmuted
Just
you.
making things up.
Yeah, I know.
Would you
I just
say-
muted him. I'm just
No,
muting him
this-
again, and
this-
afterwards
Do you make the
we'll deal with him.
argument that these people are Islamophobic? Or would you say that
Yes.
they hate a state which proclaims itself to be Muslim?
Well, there's political context. They're a
Yeah.
political
There's a lot of-
organization. You
That's-
can't just
this-
smile
this
your
is-
way through
this
it.
is- Yeah, this is a point that I was trying to make earlier, that it's political, right? So would you say the ear guns are terrorists?
The Irgun,
Yes,
yeah,
they
they're.
proclaim themselves to be terrorists.
They're
Of course, Israel-
terrorists.
Israel listed them as a terrorist.
So we're all fucking Jewish people terrorists. No, correct, right? I mean, this is the point that I'm trying to make.
So yes, they are. That would be Islamophobic, and it is wrong.
Yes.
And that charter is wrong because guess what? While I can understand people's justifications, and we should humanize individuals, Palestinians and Israelis need to be humanized and not demonized, and understand how
agree with that.
material conditions affect human beings on the ground and what life
Biggest
looks
condition.
like. And let's start with that. If we don't humanize each other, it's not going anywhere. I've been around a lot of Palestinian dehumanization to the point where I have to get yelled at by some crazy right-wing family members only to come online and be called a Palestinian hater. I love it. I love being both of those being charged at me. But yes,
like
it is anti-Semitic. It is Islamophobic. And it is wrong whether or not your mother was killed by a Palestinian in a suicide bombing,
They don't know what
or
the
you had
difference is.
or you had to bring
They think Jewish equals
or it doesn't matter. It
think.
doesn't matter.
They
It
don't
doesn't
know the
matter to me what
difference.
they think.
know nothing.
Just
their
like
entire
there's
life except genocide.
they're not all.
Except
Stop
genocide.
infantilizing everyone. You're turning them into little rat idiots,
Yeah.
cave people. These are human beings. They're
That's what you
much more.
said. You called
I
them
did
that.
not say that. I never said that.
Well, it just erupted from. It bubbled up from.
I never said that. I'm arguing the opposite. I'm opposing the exact opposite. That just like people, my poor mom who had to be an injury officer in the IDF in the 80s and saw, had to suicide bombings and injured people. My dad who fought. These people, as much as I understand why they believe, they're wrong about certain things, especially around this topic because they can't see it. In the same way that people who have been on the receiving end of it are also wrong. And I can understand them. I can understand them and why they believe what they believe, but they are wrong for believing it.
Do Palestinians have a right to defend themselves against invasion?
Obviously, they have of course. Who would argue otherwise?
Nobody.
So why are they not justified in fighting Israel and driving them out of the West Bank?
So a really controversial opinion,
or out of Gaza.
F around and finally, let me give you a controversial opinion. I want to see how you feel with this. After October 7th, I remember speaking with my family, and I said, you know what? I would have understood them if they just attacked the military compounds. I would have gotten it. I wouldn't have been so upset. But I think the thing that really kills me is the fact that they videoed themselves stealing hostages, attacking people, beheading people in a home with a shovel, throwing grenades into bomb shelters full of children and like elderly people. That was
beheading babies. Where's the evidence?
Who said beheading babies? I dodged that talking point. I did not say that. You're just listening to
so I misheard you.
You misheard me.
Someone with a shovel.
I'm waiting for the proposition. It was aimed at me.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I already said it.
That's extremely.
You're going to ask me a question. You were painting a picture, and you're going to ask me a question
about Palestinians that they murdered someone with a shovel. They decapitated them.
Yeah, there's a video of them trying to decapitate someone with a hoe.
And there's a picture of a burned up child with.
I'm not even going to go there. That's already the talking point. There's no point in talking about. I'm talking about something that's easily verifiable that you can go on October7th.com or whatever it is that they set up and just watched the live stream of someone else's on their Facebook. Of them with a hoe. I know. I was trying to say so. In my opinion,
I have a question.
I would have been okay if they just attacked the military compounds. I actually would have been this is what happens when you blockade people for too long. They're going to act this way. But I was wondering if that's controversial for you because I know my family members, some of them got very upset when I said that.
Here's another.
Scott, one second, because I know Nate wants to go, and F around just wants to respond to the thing that I targeted at him, and then Nate, you will go. Yeah, go around.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of in the same feelings that you have about it. Had they only attacked the military, then I wouldn't have nearly the same reaction that I do, considering the way they did what they did, because they were found with letters on their bodies translating Arabic into Hebrew to take your pants down. And yes, many children were killed. I've seen the pictures. I've seen the videos of cooked babies holding their mother in their arms. So to pretend that there weren't many children killed and many women raped, there are actually videos of Hamas prisoners admitting to engaging in necrophilia. Okay, they're not beat up. They're not scared. They're saying, we were screwing dead women. Okay, and that's what bothered me. And they were celebrating. They were screaming, God is great. God is great, as they raped women, gang raped them, called their parents.
There's not a single...
Look,
yes, there is. Me a single piece
the UN.
Of
I'll send you the UN link. You want the UN link?
All right.
I'll send you the UN. It's clear and convincing evidence.
Okay, let's not derail the point because Nate's been wanting to speak. Let's not derail the point.
Single verified case.
Nate has a question. Nate has a question.
Meanwhile, while Nate is speaking, then we got to go to Scott. But while Nate goes, and then we're going to go to Scott. You guys collect your information, exchange information in the chat here, so we can.
Yeah, about that claim. You F around and Marcy. Go ahead.
This is all the talk.
No, just take the time to do it behind closed doors. Put it in the chat.
I'm not collecting info. I'm just talking. I don't collect info.
It seems like so. I just don't understand in this exchange. My question is, if we're talking about geopolitical complexity and emotional complexity, and we have both of these going on at the same time, then. I just don't see how this isn't already a dead conversation. I don't understand why I can find truth in this, if that doesn't make sense.
Well, it does
Makes sense to
matter
me.
what actually happened in these attacks, right? So, right here, according to a BBC report, videos show Hamas fighters attempting to decapitate victims using shovels. Additionally, the Wikipedia page on October 7th has links to the actual resources of these videos. So, I think Don Don was just trying to make a point that, like, you know, this stuff has happened, and then someone was trying to graft onto him some kind of other conspiracy theory about beheading babies, whether or not that's true or not. So
one way I would look at I'm sorry, because I know Steve, someone was going to talk, but just like one way I would look at it is like, look, it's impossible to understand a military if you don't have a group of however many, 500 or 1,000 people that were totally willing, with no reservations, to either obey or disobey a chain of command and go do this, right? And you can wake up and, even if you don't want to see it, you can look at as much of that as you want to, or just be that way, or whatever it is. And so, like, I just don't understand why there's not questions about what PTSD and recovering from the war efforts are like in Palestine, as well as understanding how a political structure emerged which allowed an event like this. Like, that seems unthinkable.
Yeah, that's disturbs me. Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was going to say, like, I mean, to just that point, just directly, PSD and all these things occurred with, like, Israeli soldiers as well. This isn't something that's specialized to Palestinians. But I'm trying to get to with Don, though. So, like, if we're looking at the expanse from like 67 onward, right? Where is there a specific point? Because people are making these comments about things being I don't know, ideologically represented by their belief in Islam. Do you think there is a differentiation there with the 1967 borders? Were these people also in that same frame of reference of looking at it as like, oh no, we're Jews and we need to maintain our Jewish area, right? So it always wars mostly come down to like resources and area, right? And this is what I keep coming back to. It has nothing to do about religion. It has to do with it's nonsense.
Yes.
Religion out of it.
You think?
Nonsense.
1 second. After 67,
Yeah.
So there was two things. A lot of Israelis that after the 48 came back from the West Bank, who lived in that area, who were in Jerusalem and left, or Hebron, all these different areas. After 67, when Israel captured Jerusalem, a lot of religious people saw that as a sign that the Jews have reconquered Jerusalem. Finally, in our 2,000-year history, our Amidah, the prayer we say every day, 3 times a day, about returning to Israel and ruling our land again, is fulfilled. And they began to want to move eastward towards the West Bank. Because West Bank is in reference to the mandate as opposed to the way Israelis see it, but whatever. So they moved eastwards towards the West Bank, and they wanted to go and fulfill their dreams and aspirations. A lot of them also wanted to go back to where they lived. That was a part of it. It wasn't until 1988 Jordan officially annexed the West Bank to Israel. It wasn't until then. It was an official annexation.
And I guess like these things are going to go back to like the King James Hotel, right?
I don't know if it goes all the way that far back. Yeah, I don't know if it goes all the way
back. To me, it really does seem that it goes all the way back, because we can't just say like it goes back to 67 and everything from there is tabula rasa, right? We got to go back to the fucking 30s as well. And if we go back to the 30s and we're looking at the behavior of Israel's when they Jews when they first went to that area, they were the first terrorists, right? I mean, you would agree to that, correct?
So when at the beginning, Israel's formation is not a religious one. It's a secular
it's
one.
Not, it's exactly. It's secular. It has nothing to do with religion. That's my point.
But then again, it still has something to do with religion, because the religion, in a way, dictated the history of the people for such a long time. So it wasn't an accident that secular Jews of the Haskalah during the late 1800s decided that, and from Eastern Europe decided that, hey, we're going to go develop our own land using their socialist, libertarian kind of like secular ideas. Ben Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, was a secular Jew who believed in labor Zionism, was a socialist. So, but it was the religious minority that does push into the West Bank as it is even today.
I also want to read just for this stream. I find it to be very important. Hamas, a Palestinian Islamist organization, has been directly inspired by the principles and tenets of Islam, particularly in its ideological foundation and objectives. The group identifies itself as a Islamic resistance movement, and its charter, originally published in 1988, explicitly references Islam as a guiding framework for its actions and goals. Key areas of wait until I'm done, please. Key areas of Islamic influence: religious justification for resistance. Hamas frames its struggle against Israel as a religious duty, jihad, to reclaim what it considers to be Islamic lands. The organization draws from Islamic teachings that emphasize defending Muslim territories and resisting perceived oppression. Social and religious services. Inspired by Islamic principles of charity and community support, Hamas runs extensive social programs, including schools, hospitals, and welfare services, which are rooted in the Islamic concept of zakat, almsgiving, and community solidarity. Islamic identity and governance. In areas under its control, such as Gaza, Hamas incorporates Islamic law, Sharia, into its legal and administrative systems, further reflecting its ideological foundation in Islam. Charter and religious narrative. The original Hamas charter explicitly quotes Quranic verses and emphasizes the religious duty of Muslims to oppose Israel's existence. While the group issued a more moderate political document in 2017, its foundational Islamic narrative remains influential.
Yep.
So
100%.
Yeah. I guess where I was trying to go with Don is more the nitty gritty of like the past history. I might have been out of bounds here and not dealing with the question correctly. I apologize.
No, it's all good. I just wanted to read that for the stream, because it's very important to understand that if you listen to any of the Hamas leadership, they make no bones about this. This isn't a secret.
Correct.
So to me, there is a major ideological component to the fundamental reason why there is such a shit show in the Middle East. And
you know, I don't disagree with that.
Can you read the Hadith for us in the charter?
You look it up. You look it up and you read it if you want to read it on the air.
Okay.
Just let us know when you're ready.
Sorry, but
by the way, everyone can go ahead and chime in. I don't want to
talking about the fucking 67 Accord.
One second, I want to hear Marcy.
Yeah, Marcy, what were you saying?
I'm sorry, but I just think it's funny, and obviously you guys maybe can wean out what my perspective is. Sometimes you'll hear some interesting people online, or you can wean out what their opinions are. They may be anyways, if someone's talking about the Torah, if someone pulls up the Talmud or a Hadith.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's a little sussy. I think when you when you look at the specific hadiths. If it's a quote, if it's a hadith from their charter, but generally I vibe with you, Marcy. I think a lot of times when people be like, "Oh, have you heard of this Talmudic verse or this specific?" They might be cherry picking a bit, you know?
Yeah.
Okay, well, this is from their charter.
Yeah, but
people who use it to justify an argument.
Charter.
Yeah, but so is this from the revised charter or the original charter?
The original one.
The original one. Okay, so I just want people to know that there was a politically revised charter. A lot of people say, "Well, it doesn't really change because the foundations of the organization and the state are." Yeah. So you can go ahead and read the hadith if you want again.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, well, hold on a second. Let me get, because I have the hadith, but I don't know if it's word for word the same as the charter. Let me find the charter first.
Okay. So find the charter.
I'll get a word for word.
Okay. No, but I really hope the ceasefire moves forward. I think just real quick, just to remind people that there is a ceasefire supposed to start at 10 a.m. Israel's time, which is in about 2.5 hours. So I'm excited for that. Hopefully, this will open up the breach it for a permanent ceasefire. I think that most sane people are for that. And interestingly, I was actually watching Israeli news earlier. I think it was Channel 12. And one of the people who present, the anchors, was talking about how I'm glad that we're back to a type of status quo where the far right wants us to continue the war, but the government says no, we're going to try to end it. And I'm glad that's the place right now that this is happening. I kind of want that to end. I want the war in Gaza to end. I want to move forward to actually think of solutions. So ceasefires are always good. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so I'm just going to start kind of, not at the beginning, but Hamas has been looking forward to implement Allah's promise, whatever time it might take. Prophet, prayer, and peace be upon him, I guess they're talking about Muhammad, said, "The time will not come until Muslims will fight the Jews and kill them, till the Jews hide behind rocks and trees, which will cry out, 'O Muslim, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come on and kill him.' This will not apply to the Garkad tree, which is a Jewish tree." And that's in Article 7 of the Charter, okay? And they said that is the purpose of Hamas. That's their ultimate goal. They are looking forward to implement Allah's promise. This is very important. People say, "Oh, it's just a response to the mean Jews." No, this is who they are. They're telling you who they are. And if you don't want to listen, well, that's on you. And can I say one more point, that when they talk about negotiation and peace, their position on peace?
The floor is yours.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't have that quote lined up. You guys go ahead. I'm going to find it.
No, come on, dude. If you're going to tell that quote, you got line that quote up. Come on, now.
Get that quote up. I think that.
Well, I think he's highlighting beautifully my point that these ideologies have to be archived. They can't hold any place in the world of governance or politics. We can't have people referring to the Bible or the Quran.
This is the charter. This is 1988. This isn't the Bible, and I got it. So let me go. So it's called Peaceful Solutions. They have a section. They have a section for peaceful solutions. It's called Peaceful Solutions, Initiatives, and the International Conferences, Article 13. Peace initiatives.
I would say even things for charity and stuff. We can't have ideologies.
Solutions.
Hang on, brother.
International. Can I go? Can I say it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. And then Wise can go afterwards.
Peace initiatives, and the so-called peaceful solutions and the international conferences to resolve the Palestinian problem are all contrary to the beliefs of the Islamic resistance movement. For renouncing any part of Palestine means renouncing part of the religion. The nationalism of the Islamic resistance movement is part of its faith. The movement educates its members, yada, yada, yada. I'm trying to find this other part. They basically say, to paraphrase, they say that there will never be anything but violent jihad, and anybody who even entertains the idea of a peaceful solution with Israel will be damned to burn in hell forever. So this isn't the Torah, this isn't the Talmud, this isn't the Quran. This is 1988, and these people haven't changed. So it's important to know what they're about.
I do want to push back that these people haven't changed. I think Hamas has definitely changed from the early 80s. I think it's a lot less socialist than it used to be, especially around the time when the Arab socialism was very, very present and there.
I mean, the fundamental purpose of it hasn't changed.
Yeah, but I think that it is important. You can note that Hamas is an arm of the Muslim Brotherhood, which does, in its general philosophy, argue for a caliphate and ummah in the area to restore the caliphate. And a lot of their esoteric ideas think about Jerusalem and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the step where Muhammad ascended to heaven, and thus the Palestinians need to be that drives the step. You can, if you watch your speeches, you hear what they talk about. But I do think that they've changed a bit, and it's important to know that they did change a lot. And they did even make concessions to the revised charter to try to appeal to an international community. This is not a terrible thing. This is a good thing. This is advancement as opposed to from their big origins as a truly very theocratic, much worse than they are now. Still terrible, but we got to recognize the change.
Yeah, there was a 2017 update, which is a more moderate political document that is garnered to gain international. To be more sympathetic internationally. But if you look at it, the foundational idea is still in there. That is the problem. I don't think we also should be.
Well, the foundational idea is resisting Israeli occupation. That's
there was no occupation yet. There was no occupation.
One last quote.
No.
All these are just Palestinian resistance organizations.
Oh, come on, man. You're eating the sauce on
Well, it's like Hezbollah. Do you believe Hezbollah is
come on. After everything we just read,
necessarily
come on,
radical Muslim organization, or do you think it's merely a reaction to the 1983? Am I correct on that, Don? Right,
the 1982 war for the. I think it's a fusion of many of the. It's a fusion of many of these things, and I worry that
Hezbollah was born out of that.
Yeah, I mean, out of that conflict, after the fall of the PLO, and them being ousted out of Lebanon, that was a part of the deal. During that power vacuum, Hezbollah was one of the groups that sprung. And I think
Sabra and Shatila. You know about Sabra and Shatila, right?
Yeah, I know about. Yes. What's your point?
Well, my point is that war led to a massacre of Palestinians and Lebanese, specifically Muslims. Obviously, the Christians in Lebanon allied with the Israeli government. But my point is that Hezbollah was a result of this 1982 war. And it exists as a resistance group to Israeli occupation and Israeli incursion. And my point is that Hamas, PFLP, PLO, all these organizations were simply born as resistance groups to the Israeli occupation.
So there was no occupation of Lebanon until the war. There was no occupation of Lebanon until the war, right?
Yes.
So it was only after
Hamas, PLO, PFLP.
Okay. So
that's
Israel also. Currently, there was no occupation with Hezbollah. Hezbollah's attack was not based on occupation, right?
Right.
But they existed because of that.
So whatever factors existed during the time during any power vacuum, which results in the formation of groups, is not the only determining factor. And I think what I keep hearing in this conversation, I've heard it from. F around and find out, and you, Marcy, is almost like thinking of things almost like in a ball going down a tram, and that ball is and the dominoes leading into one another. And we can look at the original domino and then find the source. And I think what we're doing here is we're not recognizing that these things are political systems, social systems have many different causes. And a big part of the formation of Hezbollah wasn't just the Lebanon war and the resulting occupation afterwards, but it was also Islamism. It was also proxy actors across the Middle East. It was Go ahead.
Well, I understand people have all sorts of unconditional concessions they wish from our enemies. I would still like to know what unconditional concessions should Israel
and the West be making?
What unconditional elements? Well, for me, I think
unconditional concessions.
I don't know what you mean by
what concessions should Israel
to give up for peace? For peace with Hezbollah?
Yes.
I don't think Israel should have any concessions with Hezbollah.
I think they should concede power, right? Because ideologies should not be accepted in the realm of governance. Nowhere should there be a governing power or body or leadership that has a holy scripture, like, a prophecy of end times.
Yeah, but why?
If they want to do this in their privacy of their home, sure, but they're not going to govern people. It should be like separation of church and state.
I mean, I think that's a good idea,
right? But understanding it is not Israel's place to govern other people that are not Israeli.
So
what concessions should Israel give to the people? To the Palestinians, because that's
I don't
really
think an ideology should be allowed to govern anybody. They can't even claim like, they own.
I
these
don't
people.
care. I don't care. People have ideologies, and
he doesn't care about ideologies.
We have to live with that.
You have to live with it. Yeah,
we have to live with the fact that there are people who have different ideas of how they want to live.
You don't breathe ideological oxygen. You don't put ideological food into your bellies, right? These are things that are science, are naturalistic, and governing should be that way too.
We all have ideologies. I think it's better to focus on what your issues are with particular ideologies, but I still want to stay. I feel like we're kind of derailing the point a little bit here.
Totally.
But Tivo, I think you asked an interesting question. What concessions will or should Israel make to get the deal done? Are you talking about with Hezbollah or with Palestine?
Both.
Okay.
So
why don't you tell us?
I already
yeah. What you tell us, Tivo? What do you think Israel should?
I'll just tell you real quick, and then I'll shut up. I think they should concede power.
I have all
they
sorts
should
of
concede
thoughts
governance.
on the subject.
Concede power.
There's pragmatic ones, there's idealistic ones, and I would like to hear from those who are defenders of Israel. I would like to hear from that side what concessions that side needs to make to secure peace, not just what does the opposite, what do their enemies need to concede in order to have peace.
That's not the first step here.
They need to concede their authority.
Sure. But one second, Wise. We can recognize that steps have to happen in order. That's absolutely correct, right? But we also have to go ahead and think of long term, right? Or what actually we have to work towards. So I actually think that the main concession Israel needs to make, especially with the West Bank, is it needs to realize that it needs to share Jerusalem. I think that's a really important aspect, important for Palestinians and their sovereignty. It's an identity point for them as a people. And I think that East Jerusalem should be recognized as Palestine, as a Palestinian's capital. I think that that would be a very important concession towards peace. As it comes with Gaza, I think that ultimately Gaza should be able to be treated as its own little statelet or whatever it might be. They need to recognize themselves. I think that an important thing that Israel has to recognize is that they're going to have to eventually relinquish control of the Philadelphia corridor. Gaza needs to have its own sovereign border with Egypt. And that they also have to make sure that they have sea access. I think those should be the long-term concessions.
When I said order, never with Hamas in control. That won't work with Hamas. There's an order.
So if Hamas literally changes everything, just called Hamas, I don't really care. I don't care who it is or what name they have. All I care about is that they're committed to peace. They are committed to coexistence. They are committed. That would be what I would care for.
That means not Hamas. That means not Hamas.
Sure, then it means not Hamas.
Like Don just said, unless Hamas throws aspects of the charters out that are anti-peace, right?
That'll never happen.
I know you're thinking. I know you believe it won't happen, but when you say no, not Hamas, no, never Hamas, it
doesn't matter
off
who.
as some kind of extreme thing.
No, all these groups have to be disabused of power, right? Like they have to be disabused of power and given to an AI overlord. That's the best word I have for it right now. But
or a Pan-Arab coalition, If the UAE and Egypt and Jordan stepped in, that'd be fine with Israel.
I think when it comes to concessions with Hezbollah, I actually don't really see what concessions Hezbollah wants Israel to make with it. I think that I think that Hezbollah is not the sovereign military
An end
of Lebanon.
to the genocide in Gaza is the purpose.
Genocide. Let's talk about genocide. That's good. Let's talk about genocide.
That time where we should touch the genocide narrative, and then I think we're going to finish with that tonight. Someone who thinks there is a genocide going on, maybe start and tell us why you think there's a genocide going on in Gaza.
I'm not the person to talk about that, so someone else needs to do that.
Come on, there's a lot of takers on this one. Talk up. You guys believe it's a genocide? Back it up.
Yeah, I mean.
No, this isn't a point I'm willing to debate, so I won't. And I said as much.
That's
I'm going to stick to that.
Of course, you won't debate the most important point.
I have a different point, but I don't.
I want to stop that. I want to stop that and find out. I want to stop that. So at the beginning of the conflict, I actually didn't talk about it for a very long time. It was a difficult topic for me to talk about. And when someone shows the emotional intelligence to say this is a topic that I cannot really debate with people, I think that shows heightened emotional intelligence. We should encourage people to do exactly what TiVo is doing, and I discourage exactly what you just did.
Yeah,
if you're not going to talk about it, then you don't go saying it's a genocide.
Well, no, you're allowed to have your opinion with saying I'm uncomfortable discussing. It's difficult for me, and I don't want to open up wounds, get wild, and I want to stay in control. I want to listen, collect my ideas, but I do have an opinion about it. Yep. That is okay. You can say that you are a Christian and you don't want to debate the legitimacy of the Bible. You can say that you believe many.
Conversation then.
Okay, but TiVo is not everyone else in the room.
Yeah. We still have more people in the room, and I completely agree with Don that we need to respect that when people are wise enough to step away from conversations where they cannot.
Wise enough. I think it's just being a coward.
Well, okay,
that's dude.
Now you're gonna get.
Come on.
Now you're gonna get a penalty. Okay, F is on a 5-minute penalty. It's only 5 minutes for fighting. He'll get back in 5 minutes, but we don't attack people here. You got to maintain good faith, which that's usually never a problem because people are almost over sincere with their honesty about their ideas and helpfulness. Under the helpfulness charter here at Pangburn, you can't attack people and call them cowards and whatnot. Wise, I swear, if you promote AI government one more time, you're getting a penalty for ideological repetition. No, I'm kidding. But what are you going to say?
I just would like to propose something about genocide to prevent it, right? I think if people started thinking of themselves as stewards of the earth rather than owners of it, right? And so that's when I'm like referring to relinquishing power, where, and I won't say, what, right? Because you asked me not to, but if we relinquished our power into something that would, its goal would be more to like let us be stewards of things, especially with issues like global warming and, when we think we just own something and we don't have the foresight into seeing what our actions are really doing. Yep. It's a little myopic to be like, well, I'm the owner of this type of, I'm the owner of these people and I govern these people and we're going to do what I say.
I think there's a lot of, ideal situations that you're referencing and there's probably a lot of problems there. We might need a whole show for that. But I think to kick us off, what I'll do, this might be better. The Israel, and this is with regards to genocide in Gaza, the claim that there's a genocide in Gaza. The Israel Defense Force assert that their military operations in Gaza are conducted with the utmost regard for humanitarian principles, explicitly denying any intent to commit genocide. IDF Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi Just everyone wait until I'm done, and then we'll respond.
Sorry, I forgot I was needed.
It's all good. Emphasized this stance in a communication to soldiers, stating, "We are not on a killing spree, revenge, or genocide. We have come to win and defeat a cruel enemy who deserves a bitter loss." Furthermore, the IDF's top legal advisor has cautioned against any conduct that could be deemed unacceptable, underscoring the importance of adhering to international law and maintaining ethical standards during military operations. These statements reflect the IDF's official position, which is to conduct military actions in Gaza with a focus on targeting combatants while striving to minimize harm to civilians in accordance with international humanitarian law. Don, do you think this has been the goal of the IDF, and what letter grade would you give them on this?
I'm getting the first question. I would give the IDF a B minus.
B minus, and why not an
A? One thing that is troubling that I think Bo and I have spoken about a lot is the use of white phosphorus in areas. Another one would be unguided artillery in areas. So I think that has been very detrimental to civilian damage mitigation. Another reason I would give them a B minus is on hesitancy of movement. A lot of disorganization during the beginning of the war, which led to a lot of mistakes and a lot of issues. On top of that, I think it is a type of political weakness within Israel's right-wing government that was kind of like holding itself together after the war, where they almost like, we're gonna move aid, we're not gonna move aid, we're gonna take care of the aid, we're a bunch of issues regarding that horribly felt flotilla with the U.S. government. So yeah, I would give them like a B minus. I would say.
Now, any other letter grades out there? I'm sure there's some Fs in the audience here. If anyone feels like talking about
C minus, baby.
I got a grade.
Bo says B. Bo says
I got a grade. They would have gotten an A from me if they used AI. Right? Because they wouldn't have made these retarded mistakes.
Okay, Wise, I got to give you a 5-minute penalty for ideological repetition. It's okay. It's only 5 minutes. Chill out, have a glass of water, and go play with some AI tools. Marcy,
somebody argue in favor of genocide?
Marcy,
where's the pro-genocide argument?
Well, we're coming at it there, F. We'll get to it. Marcy, what do you got? Letter grade?
So I don't think you can really give them a letter grade because, frankly, their operations aren't militarily. Like, they aren't military operations.
Okay.
I don't think you can justify them as being that. But I'm not here to debate that. I'm here to make not the pro-genocide argument, as Ephraim Round might say. I'm making the anti-genocide argument.
Okay.
I'll make it for you.
Making the case.
Hang on, F.
I'm making the case as to whether it is genocide.
I just server muted F5, Ryan. You're going to have to stay quiet. You might not be able to, so just server muted you. Maurice, finish what you have to say. Marcy, yeah. Fuck me.
Maurice.
It's Marcy, right?
Yeah, I go by Marcy.
Okay, Marcy. Okay, I apologize.
Okay, Malice, let's hear from you.
No issues. So the case for genocide.
Mao Zedong.
Yes. Okay. So the case for genocide is that this is a bit of an old article that I'm reading from. This is actually from March 26th. So if anyone knows who Francesca Albanese is, she's the prosecutor at the UN. But at the time of this article, 30,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been killed since October 7th. Further, 12,000 are missing, are reported missing, presumed dead under the rubble, and I'll get to this very quickly. Please be patient. More than 70% of the reported deaths have been women and children.
Just before you keep going, can you please get a little bit closer to your mic and just a little bit louder if you can? You might be sleeping beside your wife or something right now. But yeah, thanks.
Is this a bit louder?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so Albanese noted that Israel has killed more than 30,000 Palestinians in Gaza since October 7th. 12,000 reported missing and are presumed to be dead under the rubble. So more than 70% of the recorded deaths are women and children. And Israel has failed to provide any evidence that the other 30%, which are adult males, are Hamas fighters. So basically the presumption is that the 30% of those adult males are all Hamas fighters. But we know that 70% of them are women and children. So that's part of it. But the claim for genocide is not about numbers. So she goes on. The second violated act, Israeli forces have wounded more than 70,000 Palestinians and detained thousands of Palestinian men and boys and subjected them to torture. There's a case in Israel, there was a pro-rape riot that happened in Israel where they essentially went and freed people who were convicted of raping Palestinian prisoners, and they went and they freed these people, and now they're actually celebrities inside of Israel. Go on shows, they're quite popular and famous in Israel now. And these are people who raped to death Palestinians with metal rods. So, anyways, but this isn't related to the genocide part. So,
atrocities.
There are calls for violent annihilation, like Yoav Gallant has said he wants to cut off all electricity, water, food into Gaza. This means to starve them. And yeah, so I guess that's the another part of the genocide case is the sort of the attempt to annihilate a nation or a group of people, which is the attempt being made. All matter of civilian infrastructure has been destroyed within Gaza, so there's not really civilian life left for people to live in. And there's food being restricted. I mean, people are eating rotting flour with bugs in it. This is the situation for the average Gazan. So this is the case why Israel is attempting a genocide there. And
okay.
Yeah, not even getting to malnutrition rates that it's happening in Palestine territories right now. It's fucking atrocious. But I don't think Don is saying what you think he's saying.
No, it's not about what I'm saying. It's not about what I'm saying. Travis is asking people for their grades about what's happening in Israel.
Yeah, Scott.
I think Bo is next now.
Bojangles next, then we'll go to Scott, and then we'll get our letter grades, and people can support.
No, and then we have to get to before Scott F around and find out needs to go.
Well, I think we'll go Scott and then F around.
Okay.
Bo, go ahead. Letter grade.
Sure. Oh yeah, C minus to D, somewhere in there.
Hang on 2 seconds.
Already
Sogs, please mute. Sog 6. Sog 6. If you're real,
I just server muted him.
Go ahead, Bo.
I'll unmute in 5 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. So C minus to D. Same reason that Don listed the use of white phosphorus and the use of unguided artillery in urban areas, but I hold that to I guess probably a higher degree of severity than Don would, but that's pretty much it. Yeah.
So the white phosphorus issue, just because I think it's important. There are some international regulations here. Protocol 3 of the Convention of Certain Conventional Weapons. This protocol restricts the use of incendiary weapons, including those containing white phosphorus, particularly in areas with concentrations of civilians. It prohibits attacks using incendiary weapons against civilians and limits their use of military targets within civilian areas. However, certain munitions with with incidental incendiary effects, such as smoke or signal devices, are excluded from this definition. And then the Chemical Weapons Convention, the CWC, defines chemical weapons as those that rely on toxic properties of chemicals to cause harm. White phosphorus is not classified as a chemical weapon under this convention, as its primary effects are incendiary rather than toxic. So, Bo, is it your opinion, because I do know you're a military man, is it your opinion that white phosphorus is against international regulations, or do you just not like the use of it?
So it's going to depend on how the Israelis frame their usage of it. So they could easily phrase it as we weren't using it for the incendiary properties. We were using it for the smoke that it produces. But that being said, it's to me, it's kind of it doesn't really matter what their justification was. Even if they were using it as a smoke, primarily for the smoke, it doesn't change the fact that they were dropping a very, very toxic, because white phosphorus is incredibly toxic, very toxic and highly incendiary munition on a civilian area. I don't see the justification for using it as an obscurant or a screening munition that just doesn't track.
Then is it true that you disagree?
It does not track,
Is it true that you disagree then with the international regulation Protocol 3? Because it sounds like you disagree with that.
So the munitions that they were using, I can tell you right now, is called M825. It's a artillery launched projectile. Yeah. So my assumption here is when they're talking about, they're probably talking about like handheld grenades, like smoke grenades, not full blown artillery launch munitions. But honestly, I would need to look into the protocol more and dig into it and see if that conversation was had when that protocol was written.
All right.
But I mean, if it's written in a way that supports the use of like M825, that artillery launch munition, then yeah, I would disagree with it.
Okay, cool.
I'm looking at it right now. Protocol 3 is a 2005 amendment protocol to the Geneva Convention relating to the adoption of additional distinctive emblem. Under the protocol, the protective sign of the red crystal. Hold on, where are we getting to? White phosphorus. Protective use, medical regulations. Personnel may mark themselves, their vehicles, ships, buildings. So it seems like Protocol 3 is talking about, I don't know, this support groups.
Scott, I just read it. Like I just read, this protocol restricts the use of incendiary weapons, including those containing white phosphorus, particularly in areas with conventions. I don't think we need to read it again because I just read it. Unless there's a
because white phosphorus has been used as a pretty insidious weapon on populations, right? So what happens with white phosphorus once it ignites, it just burns through fucking skin and bone. It just burns nonstop, right? So that's sort of the reason why white phosphorus was called out by the Geneva Convention in the first place. Its design is mostly for illumination purposes.
Obscuring smoke, not illumination.
Oh, because I thought like, well, what I was in, it was mostly for illumination. So you shoot a white phosphorus.
You're thinking of magnesium, not that's an illumination round. You're thinking of white phosphorus is smoke. That regardless doesn't matter.
So the chemical weapons. Okay. So the Chemical Weapons Convention outlined that white phosphorus. Just to read this one more time. White phosphorus is not classified as a chemical weapon under this convention, as its primary effects are incendiary rather than toxic. But Scott, do you have how do you think the IDF has performed their duties under the international law?
I think they're definitely skirting the bounds. I mean, they're not going outright just being fucking a bull in a china shop, but they're definitely pushing the boundaries. That's for sure.
Okay. So maybe would you give them like a B- or a C+? Like
like a C-. Yeah, okay. C- for sure. Yeah.
That's
Can I ask, do you guys think that Israel has a right to defend itself?
Yes.
Of course.
Yep. Yeah. Not an unlimited one, though.
So under international law, if you are an occupier of territory, you don't have the right to quote unquote defend yourself or do military actions in this occupied territory. So this is international law.
Gaza wasn't occupied.
So
it says it all.
This is not talking about October 7th. This is talking about the incursions, because that's in sovereign Israeli territory. That's defending yourself.
Okay.
This is any incursion into Gaza after the fact. After they cleared the Hamas militants out of Israel proper, is illegal
I
under
do-
international.
I don't agree with that
That's
assessment.
not-
or
that's
that
not how
interpretation.
self-defense works.
I'm not going to debate. I'm just going to ask a question and see what people's responses are.
Sure.
My question is to those who don't believe this is a genocide. After the dust settles, let's assume that this eventually ends. And there are investigations. The ICJ courts do their thing. And there's also other report, like basically the dust settles and the evidence shows conclusively to the world that it was a genocide. What do you believe would be the appropriate penalties for Israel and its leadership?
Jail time, international warrants, sanctions,
International court.
yeah, whatever the
Very
appropriate thing the nations
similar-
decide to do.
Reparations.
Very similar to
Yeah.
post World War II. Obviously, it wouldn't be to that scale, but the same type of deal, in my opinion.
Reparations, yeah, everything, yeah, all of that.
So that's my answer. But
Nuremberg.
We're going to go to F around find out. How do you think the IDF
It's
has
just
handled
F.
all this?
Wait, sorry, what was the question?
How do you think the IDF has handled the response to October 7th terrorist attack and coming into Gaza? Do you think they have committed a genocide? Do you think they've what letter grade would you give them of how well that they've stuck to international law? Yeah.
That's a lot of questions to answer in a short amount of time that I'm given. What letter grade would I give them as far as complying to international law?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, I'm not an international lawyer, although I am trained in the law. I'd have to wait and read more about that ICJ case, because that seems to be the big one. From what I can tell, that the evidence actually is. I believe that there are probably instances of what can be defined as war crimes. I don't think those war crimes amount to genocide. I think all the evidence points against genocide. What overall grade would I give Israel in prosecuting this war against Iran and all their numerous proxies? It wouldn't be an A, and it wouldn't be a B, and it wouldn't be a D or an F. And that's not because of what they did militarily, but what they did humanitarian efforts. I think they should have devoted a whole lot more time and effort and had a much more robust plan.
Yep.
And
Well said.
social media. What?
Yeah, I agree. Well said. Yeah.
Yeah, and just they needed to be prepared for something like this, and they should have had all the humanitarian zones and preparations planned out and ready to show to the world, because they flunked the propaganda war. No question about that. It's not even a comparable fight. You just look online, and on YouTube alone, it's 90% plus anti-Israel.
Yes.
Just look at the world's opinion; it's mostly anti-Israel. So they've done really poorly on that front. Genocide, no way is this remotely close to a genocide. And the reason for that is simple. There's no genocidal intent, okay? And that's the tricky one. You have to have genocidal intent.
What about Yoav Gallant? Most clear.
He did not call for genocidal intent. You gotta have to find the specific quotes. Most of them,
I give you a quote.
No, we're not gonna derail him in the middle. You brought up.
Just one sec. Let him finish, and then we'll go back to Marcy. But we got to let F around find out finish his spiel here.
My rant.
Yeah,
everyone got their time on the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it, guys. Appreciate it. You've been real fair. As for what Gallant said, that doesn't show genocidal intent. What one ruler, even if it was the president, said in the time, and you have to look at the timing of it. They said something outlandish and improper. That's all it was. It doesn't show government policy. And that's what you have to show intent. It takes more than one quote. It takes more than two quotes. It takes more than three quotes. And you guys are going to learn that in the near future when the ICJ comes back and says no genocide. We couldn't prove it. The evidence wasn't there. And when that happens, well, I'll ask the question later, but I got such a large argument. I mean, how much time do I have?
Well, you're not...
5 more minutes, 6 more minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So yeah, as for genocide, you have to look at intent. So how do you get to intent? You have to look at their conduct, right? What have they done? They've provided food. They provided electricity. They provided fuel. They provided internet. They provided medicine. They provided advance warning for attacks, roof knocks, emails, direct phone calls, messages, leafletting, loudspeakers, every form of advance notice known to mankind. No army in the world has done that. They created humanitarian zones and passageways. Then let's just look at the numbers. So I know the other guy said, well, the numbers don't matter, and they don't really matter. But when you're talking about genocide, the fact is, you can't ignore numbers, right? And what does a genocide do to numbers? It makes the numbers go down. Well, guess what's happened to the Palestinian population since 1948? It's gone up 10x since 48, and if you look at the data in the past year, it's gone up over 100,000. So if this is a genocide, and believe me, Israel has the capability and capacity to wipe out every man, woman, child, dog, cat, and mouse in Palestine overnight. If this is Israel's genocide, they get an F for that. No question about it. And as for starvation, starvation isn't something that's ambiguous. You see it and you know it. It's like obscenity, right? You see it when you know it. Look at pictures of the Holocaust. You want to see starving people, skeletons dying of lack of nutrition? The internet's available for everybody. I see plenty of pictures and video of people in Gaza. They might be malnourished. They might not be getting enough meals per day. They might not be getting enough vitamins, but they're not starving to death. That's a blatant lie. And the evidence is in the FOOSNet, in the IPC, and the FRC, Famine Review Commission reports. Israel's pumping in thousands of tons of food. If Israel had the inclination to commit a genocide, they wouldn't be pumping in thousands of tons of food. They wouldn't be giving breaks in the war to immunize and vaccinate the entire population. I mean, give me a break. The United States wanted to kill the Indians, right? They put the disease in the blankets. Israel's going around vaccinating the entire population. So give me a break. There's no genocide. And I think that's enough for me. Thanks for giving me the time.
Yeah, and well said. And I for one, agree with you, what you've said here.
What's in the vaccinations?
Oh, God. Why?
Oh, they're giving him COVID. They're giving him COVID.
I'm still upset I haven't gotten my 5G from the COVID vaccine.
Now,
I keep getting LTE by my job, and I'm telling you, when RFK was telling me that I was getting that 5G, I was really excited. I even got the shot 4 times. I thought 5 times I would have maybe gotten like 40G, but that never happened.
I'm growing a third testicle. You got to put the Cat 5 cable all the way down your throat, and then you'll get a connection.
So wait, I didn't need to get the COVID vaccine.
No,
I got a heart attack and strokes for nothing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Now this episode's definitely getting demonetized on YouTube. By the way, thanks for bringing up COVID,
sorry,
motherfuckers. No, I'm kidding. But let's go. Does anyone else have want to add to the letter grade? We are getting close to wrapping up here.
I wanna talk about the whole war in general real quick, and I do mirror a lot of what F. Around found out and saying I think that for genocide, you do need that special intent that this doesn't seem to be present, especially with those counterfactuals.
I can give you intent.
You want to do the Yoav Gallant quote that you wanted to say?
Well, it's not even necessarily Yoav Gallant. Many...
Before you finish this, please try to, in your response, try to explain or deal with the counterfactuals brought up by F. Around and find out.
Well, what is this counterfactuals?
If you didn't listen to what he said, Efron, you can maybe repeat them after.
I was listening, but I don't know exactly what the
Okay, then you don't have to. You repeat them after. You say what you want to say, and then he'll remind you. Then you can give your reaction to them.
My bad. Oh, that's before I start, your favorite streamer? Do you think he has a right to use the N-word?
My favorite streamer? Do I think that my favorite streamer has a right to use the N-word?
Yeah, Destiny.
Why is Destiny my favorite streamer? What makes you think Destiny is my favorite streamer? I barely watch Destiny.
I don't know.
It was a personal ad-hominem attack, I think.
He's seen your commentary, Don somewhere. Have you ever endorsed Destiny? You might have him convinced with Dennis Prager.
Oh, my great uncle wants to remove. No, I don't. I've never. If you check out my YouTube channel, I don't think I've ever talked about Destiny. Maybe once or twice.
What about Sam Harris?
Sam Harris. I don't. You can watch my videos. I've probably talked more about Michael Knowles than I have about both of those combined.
I'll get to my point. So Israeli Minister Yoav Golan described Palestinians as human animals, and he proclaimed a total siege on Gaza and said that he wanted to deprive Gaza of electricity, of water.
I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you there. That is extremely misquoted and cherry picked. And I have to push back on that because he was referring to Hamas. On October 9th, 2 days after October 7th, he said, "We are fighting human animals, and we are going to fight them accordingly." He's dehumanizing Hamas, but he's not talking about Palestinians. He also said we're doing a complete siege of Gaza, stripping, cutting off electricity, food, water, and fuel. So there will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed. This was also during the beginning when Israel, for those 2 weeks, shut off electricity and water to Gaza, which was criticized as collective punishment. And they stopped that, I think rightfully so. And I think the one video I did release after the fact mentioned that was a mistake. Him
I haven't watched your videos. I literally just clocked that you like
okay.
Destiny.
I don't even like Destiny. I don't know why you say that I like Destiny.
Anyways,
I don't know why you say.
We don't need to talk about Steven right now. Let's talk about.
I think it's because I use such special intent. And I guess me just being around people's conversation.
After me,
No, he's just attacking Sam Harris and Destiny like these are our, authorities.
But you're talking to me next time. Just don't assume things about me. Just ask me.
It's lame.
Just ask. That's totally lame.
And the evacuation orders are not, again, an attempt for genocide. So
what
I think
about
these are very
Minister Benjamin Netanyahu described Gaza as the city of evil? And then on December 24th, framed Israel's attacks as a fight against monsters. This is a battle not only against Israel, against these barbarians.
Like Hamas?
It is a battle of civilization against.
Yeah, he's talking about Hamas. He's not talking about Palestinians.
Yeah,
it's not genocide.
That's like,
even if
and this is like when far right Zionists. This is like when far right Zionists say
December 5th,
this is
that Israel's attack on Gaza is a war that is intended, really, truly, to save Western civilization from an empire of evil.
Yes, Hamas.
Yeah, they're talking about Islamification and Islamism. This reminds me of something the far right in Israel does a lot, which is misrepresent like American quotes or European quotes, where they literally just talk about Bibi and his government and Smotrich and these fuckers that are just controlling the government right now, and they go, "Oh, they're anti-Semitic." No. We have to understand what people are saying.
Also supports this. And if you look at the labor opposition, they're actually in favor of Bibi Netanyahu's government, the military, so-called military operations into Gaza.
Well, they are military operations, even if they were genocidal. But you're literally misquoting. You're taking their quote and you're attributing something that they. Well, if you ask them, "What do you mean all Palestinians?" No, they would just say no. And I don't think their actions and the military actions highlight that with the counterfactuals that F provided about advanced warnings, humanitarian corridors, delivering of aid, all of those different things. So,
I think Marcel's trying to imply that atheists argue from authority, right? But that's the theistic position. That they're the ones who have popes, right? The atheists don't have popes. Sam Harris is not a pope of atheism, okay? And neither is the Destiny.
This is missing the point, though. Like, if you're going to point out to Netanyahu, hold on. If you're going to point out to
355 shots.
Hang on, Marcy.
Stop. Let me finish. If you're going to point out to Bibi Netanyahu saying one bad thing, can we look at all the bad things that the Palestinian Authority or people who've ever been in charge of that group have said bad, right? So then do we start comparing the bad things that Bibi said versus the bad things that they said? Is that where you want to go? because that's going to be a bad fucking time for you. I promise you.
All right.
It sets a dangerous precedent. It sets a dangerous precedent. That's why the ICJ won't ever go.
Well, we got to finish with those.
Exactly. That's why we don't. That's why we don't like it. That's why you don't deal with it on the fact that like Benjamin Netanyahu said this thing. You look at actions, right? And that's how you.
We should all know 100%. Right off the bat with Scott that he's been around since the Big Bang, so he knows what the fuck's going on here.
Didn't you lose your virginity during the Peloponnesian Wars?
Before
that was while he was writing Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
But
that's what I was taking virginity. Yeah.
All right. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was a great conversation. Everyone engaged in good faith, helpful dialogue, and anyone who got a penalty, don't worry about it. Your penalties don't stick with you in the Pangburn universe. It just happens sometimes. We get caught up with our ideas of AI and all kinds of things, and sometimes we just got to get them out there multiple times. But thank you guys for joining us. We dealt with Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire and Israel versus Palestine. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you drop a like on this video. We're all going to head down to the off-air
Palestine.
Yeah, the off-air.
I'm Israel Chai. I can yell slogans too. It's fun.
The off-air voice channels. We have the tavern. We have
Palestine.
We have the spa.
Gaza. Stop the genocide.
Jesus, stop.
So we have some protests.
Why you gotta look bad? Make your side look good at least. Don't do that. You know.
That's okay.
Original.
That's okay.
Original.
It's a tough. It's a.
We're allowed to disagree, and I think we showed tonight a good way to disagree, helpfully and jokingly and lightheartedly. And I think that was really positive, at least for me, because this topic is usually super contentious.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. We will catch you tomorrow. We'll likely be live again with another topic. Make sure you join us on Discord. Everyone's welcome here. Are you lacking a sense of community in your life? Come join our conversation community. It's a hell of a good time. We have a lot of fun. We'll catch you.